got that nerd rage. Nerd rage. I got that nerd rage. Nerd rage.
Welcome back, guys, once again to the Nerd Rage Podcast. I am Ryan Anderson, and joining me, as always, to my left is the man with the voice from the Midwest.
Brad Learman.
What's up, buddy?
Dude, the voice from the Midwest? What about Hype Man, Skype Man?
Well, you are the Skype Man, Hype Man, but,
Who took my name?
You have more names, you know. People need to know you for other things. But you are the Skype Man, Hype Man. Welcome, everybody. As always, we are here to talk about all things nerdy news, as we traditionally do. So I want to say happy Comic-Con to everybody who came back from there. We just did ourselves. Actually got to speak to Warner Brothers, so that's going to be our big talk for this week. We also have a lot of new developing things that we will be discussing as we are now in year 4 of our show, including our new scooper. We've got a little insider who's given us some breaking news. Very reputable source. The only thing that I have a bit of concerns about is that this particular individual doesn't have a second source that we can go off of, but I trust him enough, so we will be talking about it in terms of rumors, but we got some interesting stories to break to you guys that you have not heard anywhere else. So, first of all, I have to talk about something that's kind of near and dear to us here at the show. Friend of the show, John Schnepp, who you'll know from either Metalocalypse, the Collider Movie Network, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, the documentary that he did. Friend of the show, we just saw him in Vegas. He actually did pass away. Just some medical complications. I don't want to get too graphic about it all, but it was just really unfortunate because we were watching his condition seem to get worse. And then it just happened. We were even posting on our Twitter, like they had a support fund that they were doing. I think it was a GoFundMe, and Holly Payne, his better half, was trying to stay strong during all this. But we wish them and their family all the best at this time. Our deepest condolences. It's just so hard because, I mean, if I can take an extra moment here to talk about John, you know, most people don't know this, but there are certain people in the podcaster kind of network that are there and are very supportive and are great mentors. And John was that for me personally. There were a couple times, I think Brad knows that I've had some headaches trying to do everything that we do. And I reached out to John a couple times, and John had nothing but great things to say and good advice. He wasn't just like, oh, just keep doing what you're doing. It was genuinely constructive. It was always positive. You know, always liked our posts. Like, he was a great guy, and he just, it's very hard to talk about, but I genuinely miss him. And I wish that, I had been able to see him again at San Diego Comic-Con, but unfortunately he passed, right during the weekend. And, I told some of the people that we met there, who he talked about on his show regularly, that he had passed, and it was news to them. It happened right while I was on the show floor, but, we miss you, John. Wish you were here with us, but, we'll stay sweaty for you. Keeping on here though, it was the 10th anniversary of The Dark Knight, right around the time of Comic-Con there. Any additional thoughts on The Dark Knight and its legacy? Can you believe it's been 10 years?
Oh, please don't say it's been 10 years.
I know, right? It makes me feel old. While it may not be my favorite Batman film, I still think Batman Begins is better, and that's just my opinion. I still think it's a great movie overall, whether it's comic book or not. It's still a fantastic movie from beginning to end. And I give it all the high ratings, but it's just not my favorite Batman film. Where do you rank The Dark Knight on your list? Is it the best Batman film?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I think cumulatively, I think everything that was going on in the movie was very, very emblematic of, a situation that Batman would probably face against the Joker. And even to the stakes that, the Joker did go in there. Yeah. I think it was believable. Right. It wasn't something completely over the top.
Yeah, and even though Heath Ledger wasn't necessarily my Joker, like the way that I envisioned the Joker to be, I mean, that performance he gave was fantastic from beginning to end in that movie. And even Harvey Dent by Aaron Eckhart, just great cast.
Oh, yeah.
Great film. It's hard to really talk bad about it, honestly, because, even if it's not the way you envision your characterization of that hero to be, it's just still a great movie from beginning to end. And I still can't believe that we had such a great trilogy through all three of those films from Christopher Nolan. So, happy 10th anniversary. And then speaking of other movies, just saw Mission Impossible Fallout and Teen Titans Go in like the same week here. Interesting that they would put those side by side with each other, but different audiences and all that stuff. Any quick thoughts on those movies?
Mission Impossible was really good.
Didn't you see it twice already?
I did, and there are like really small Easter eggs that probably 90% of the folks that watched the movie didn't pick up on.
Okay, so without spoiling it, did you see the Mission Impossible 2 one towards the end? Just yes or no?
2 one?
Yeah.
Towards the end.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll talk about it later when we do our reacts.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So as I just said there, we will be doing a reacts for Mission Impossible because, as you can tell, Brad and I both have a lot of strong feelings about that movie. I also give Teen Titans Go a big thumbs up. I said it in my Stardust reacts earlier this week. If Mission Impossible Fallout is the best movie of the year, then Teen Titans Go to the movies is the most enjoyable movie of the year. So big thumbs up here. We'll break it down a little bit more detailed in our reacts in the coming days here. We'll talk about that later. So I think we should get into our new little segment, which is Rumor Mill here. So for our rumor, we have our inside scoop man, and even though he chooses to remain anonymous, he's given me enough proof to believe that our first big scoop is real. And that is that Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movie, which apparently seems to be coming now, and we'll have a lot more to say about that in the DC section of the show, will apparently be getting his insanity from being a drug addict. His face will be white because he'll cover them with cocaine. And then he follows up with, "I'm not joking." So what do you make of that?
That sounds like a joke.
Well, no pun intended.
Honestly, that sounds like a terrible idea. I think, and see, the hardcore, Joker fans, they're going to be extremely pissed off by this interpretation.
Oh, I mean, everything I hear about this movie upsets me. And again, take these all with a grain of salt. Just because we're getting told this and that sort of news doesn't mean this stuff is happening. That's why we dedicated this specific part of the show to it. But I've not heard anything aside. I like the idea of Joaquin Phoenix in general as being a Joker, but everything that surrounds this movie, the fact that we already have Jared Leto, the fact that whether you love that characterization or not, the fact that there's one that already exists out in the universe, the fact that this is going to be its own private dark label for DC, of which I actually talked to Warner Brothers about, and we'll talk about that later. But just none of this seems to mesh up. And I did hear a lot of things that kind of contradict some of this, but I would say take this right now because I have seen physical evidence that actually shows that they at least want something of this nature to come to fruition. And I'm not going to lie, I'm genuinely scared about this movie. And I say this as someone who loves DC and Warner Brothers. If this is the route that they want to go for this Joker movie, I hope this stays so far away from any sort of realistic DC canon, any sort of connectivity of the DC films, that people don't get it confused in any way. Cause that's my biggest fear. We've talked a great deal about why can't they put Batman on the DC TV series? And I mean actual Batman, not Gotham, but the reason that they've done that is because they don't want there to be any confusion. And the fact that there's even the idea of a second Joker movie out in the ether seems like it convolutes the waters again. And I want to believe that things are going to go right with this, because it seems like there's physical evidence that supports that Warner Brothers is at least pushing for this, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So, I mean, what is your, I guess, highest expectation out of all this? What's your best wishes for this, knowing what you know now?
Oh God. I hope they keep everything under wraps until like 2 months before the movie comes out.
Oh man, see, I'm actually the opposite.
I honestly,
yeah.
Okay, so
I want them to tell me
everything
everything, so I'm not
early,
freaking out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if they release details early, do you have any idea how much vitriol they're going to get when they see, like, any sort of, like, concepts or, like, even, like, the shortest 15-second teaser?
Yeah.
People are going to hate it. They're going to, like, no, we're not watching this.
Oh, we'll be talking about some vitriol later in DC with Titans and everything, but we'll get there in a little bit. But, yeah, like, that's the thing. Like, I think that you've got something so, you know, off kilter like this, to put it, you know, in kind of simple terms. I think you need to kind of just put all the details out there, other than obviously what the plot point is. But you need to let people know, like, who's going to be in this movie, what it's going to be about, because yeah, rumor mill and all that stuff and speculation being what it is going to be fine. And it's going to probably draw up some interest. But I think in today's day and age, if you don't give people exactly what they want, which was another thing that I talked with Warner Brothers about, because their idea of what people want might differ from what the internet kind of community, might say we want. But nevertheless, I think the most important thing to take away from this is that if you don't give some level of fan serviciness to people to get them excited initially, the hate and the outrage can reach these, you know, I want to say like over the top levels, to the point where it takes on a life of its own, almost like the Snyder Cut and all that sort of stuff. And that's the last thing that I think DC needs right now, is just another thing that they get broiled up in controversy. And you don't need any of that. So I don't know what to make of this. But that is the rumor for now. We have another one to break on next week's episode, when we have the guy from Teen Titans that I told you guys about on the last episode. He'll be joining us. He had to postpone for this week, but he'll be on next week's episode. So look forward to our interview with Joey. But let's move on. As we like to do, we do DC, Marvel, and miscellaneous. Which one would you like to start with, Brad?
Let's do Marvel, because it's going to be like... It's going to be like 10 minutes and then we're done.
Yeah, I know. And sad but true. Like, I wanted to start with Marvel here. Honestly, I wanted them to, like, I mean, not that they needed to come out the gate with a bang, but at the same time, I wanted them to be there, you know? And this year, I genuinely felt like they weren't. So, let's talk about what they did bring to the table this year at SDCC. So, at the number 3, we've got a lot of TV talk here. First is a new animated series called Marvel Rising. Initiation will be the first set of episodes. It's kind of the subtitle for essentially introducing some characters that some fans might be familiar with, like Squirrel Girl, Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel. We're gonna have Spider-Gwen. Then we're going to have Lockjaw. I mean, just a whole wider range of characters. And it looks like kind of more the diverse characters and some of the lesser known ones. And I think this is great because it allows for a great deal of representation. You know, it's animated, so there'll be a younger kid audience that will kind of grow up with these characters. My biggest concern with this, despite the fact that the internet's like, oh, where's all the white men in this? Like, I mean, we don't even need that. I think the biggest concern I have, honestly, is why don't we have better animation from Disney? And it shows here. I mean, have you seen the new Spider-Man series on Disney?
No, I have not.
It's kind of the same style of animation for anyone who's trying to, like, you know, compare and contrast here. It's kind of along the same lines where it looks subpar, especially like when you look at what DC's been putting out for years. I mean, this looks like with all due respect, like what DC was putting out in like 2007, and not even that. So it's, I don't know. What is your take about, a show like this? Is this something you're interested in or no?
Two things. Number one, it's really nothing more than a show they can put minor characters on that don't get limelight anywhere else other than, their respective comics.
Yeah.
Two, the reason the animation style probably looks dated is probably because the show had a small budget.
Probably, yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised about that. I do like that they'll have Captain Marvel in there as well because, at least she'll be getting her own feature-length debut. So it won't be completely unrecognizable characters. And I think, again, like I said before, this is a good way to create exposure in, media presence rather than comic book presence for kids who have never even heard of some of these heroes. So, yeah, I'm excited for that because inevitably they're going to change that subtitle to Secret Warriors. So, even though we're not getting that Freeform series, the live action one, it looks like a lot of the same cast is going to carry over into this animated version. So we'll see how the Secret Warriors does, and we'll keep you guys posted. Moving on to some more interesting Marvel TV talk, we go over to the Netflix side with Iron Fist Season 2. Well, let me start off by saying, Brad, are you excited for Iron Fist Season 2?
I'm going to say excited. I'm optimistic it's going to be better than the first season.
Yeah. That's not a hard bar to overcome, but I agree with you on that. On that note, we should say that we have two new additions to the series. One would be a familiar face. Misty Knight will be joining, kind of doing the whole Daughters of the Dragon thing with Colleen Wing, which I think that'll be great. And the big casting of the show is that Alice Eve, who some people will know from probably like her movies, I would say Star Trek Into Darkness. She was, I can't remember the character's name, but she was the addition to that movie. And I think anything I've ever seen her in, she's done a great job. But they'd cast her as Typhoid Mary, who is traditionally, as far as I recall, a Daredevil villain. But I think she works perfectly fine here. What do you think about a psionic character taking on Danny Rand in Season 2 of Iron Fist?
I'm hoping it doesn't turn into some self-psychological warfare with Danny Rand. I think we kind of had that already in the first season.
Oh, you mean like inner turmoil and all that?
Yeah, kind of like his own, dealings of, living and then becoming the Iron Fist and whatever guilt he felt from surviving the crash.
Okay, well, I have two tidbits that might make you happy. First of all, it looks like Danny Rand is going to be in his classic costume in this show. They showed a little teaser of that.
Is that even applicable?
So that should make you happy. Okay. And again, keeping with kind of that lighter, more comic booky stuff and not taking themselves so seriously, kind of to your point about like self-reflection and, moodiness and all that stuff. It seems like Danny has kind of embraced his role now, according to like a report that I had read recently talking about the breakdown of the show. Danny seems to be in a better place now. And for anyone who's seen Luke Cage Season 2, he pops in. I won't say where. I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But he's actually a bit of a mentor to Luke Cage when he's kind of in a down and out place in his life at that point. So Danny's actually quite optimistic, and I think he's embraced his role in a way that I think fans are going to be more excited to see him just, unleash essentially instead of being moody and, unsure of himself. So, let's see what else we got here. We have one more bit of TV talk, if I'm not mistaken, and that is The Gifted Season 2. Have you seen the trailer for this?
I saw tidbits. I know I saw a still of Polaris. That's about it.
Okay. I was going to make a joke about you and Polaris, but never mind. I'll keep that to myself.
I want to hear this joke.
Yeah. Well, she was your favorite character, right?
Yeah, for the most part. Well, for the most part from the show, yeah.
What did you take away from season 1?
Mainly because of the fact that she's related to Magneto. But sorry, go ahead.
Did you really like season 1? Because I know you're the X-Men guy.
I honestly haven't finished yet, but yeah, from what I had seen, I did enjoy it quite a bit.
Okay, well that's good to hear. That being said, I think season 2 could be very interesting. I actually thought the production value looked better in season 1, and it looked like they had more powers on display, whereas this one I didn't feel like I saw that as much. But it's supposed to be the quote-unquote dawn of the mutant age, which I think the idea is essentially that she's giving birth now. So it's going to... Because I think they said that in season 1 that mutants had either been eradicated or that they weren't... like the mutant gene wasn't as strong as it had once been or something. You know, like it felt like an extinction level event almost. But now it seems like her giving birth... there was a movie that Clive Owen did that reminded me kind of this. I can't remember the name of it.
A Clive Owen movie?
Yeah, it was Clive Owen, I think. Yeah.
Maybe Children of Men?
I think it is. Yeah, thank you. I think that is the one. I'm sure if we're wrong, I'm sure one of our fans will put something on SoundCloud like, you got it wrong. But nevertheless, though, it's kind of giving me those vibes where it's like, you know, bringing the next generation into the world and that sort of thing. And, as far as I know, I don't think they've casted anyone new into the series. So I don't know. What is your big hopes for the next season of The Gifted?
Well, since I haven't seen the ending, more than likely, if it's hinging on this new breed of mutants, I guess, or at least the second age or new age of mutants. Mm-hmm. My guess, it's probably going to start to pull they might pull further from the New Mutants or from like from the future mutants, like maybe who am I thinking of? Maybe Bishop will come in and has to do some time traveling.
Okay,
that's always my hope. I hope Bishop always comes in and does some time traveling stuff because Bishop is awesome.
Yeah, actually, I was just watching a whole little thing on Days of Future Past, and while that's still not my favorite one, I do really enjoy Bishop. So, is that your favorite Marvel or Marvel X-Men film? I should say.
Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
Of all the X-Men movies made,
I feel like it would
better. Be. It's slightly my favorite X-Men movie, just over X2.
Okay, that sounds about right. Yeah, I actually have been hearing a lot of people saying that X2 not so good, a lot of this and that.
X2 is really good.
Yeah, no, and that's what's crazy to me because some of the people that we know were going back and doing like the rewatch and all that stuff of the films, and they're like, "Oh, X2 doesn't hold up." I'm like, "No, it still pretty well holds up."
Maybe in production value.
Oh yeah, special effects and all that, sure, but yeah. It's those kind of Marvel fans that now go back to those movies and they're like, well, it's too dark and it's too moody. Well, that's because every Marvel film you've had is pretty much like Ant-Man or Captain America, so it's not that level of tone. So, nevertheless, though, I still think that it's cool that we've got The Gifted coming. The next one we have at number 2 talk is all about the X-Men, actually, and that is Uncanny X-Men is returning to the comics. And it was a big deal that they had teased it all throughout the con, and on Sunday they announced that I guess Chris Claremont is going to be attached to the project in some way.
Nice.
Does this give you excitement for the Uncanny X-Men returning, or is that just not something that registers for you?
No, I definitely think getting Chris Claremont back into the project is a really good idea.
I do too. Really do. Yeah. Some people have told me, like, I got all excited about it on our Twitter, and some people came back at me and said, oh, well, he's lost his step and it's this and it's that. But, I think of it almost akin to the way that DC fans would talk about Frank Miller. Like, I don't think Frank Miller is the Frank Miller of old necessarily. He's an older guy now. Some people tend to lose their step over time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just having them attached to the project means that you can at least get some of that magic with some, fresh talent that kind of shape things into the way that you might have seen it when that person was doing it, in their earlier years. So, a lot of people said that the Dark Knight 3, I think it is, the one that came out, I think, last year, maybe the year before, which was Frank Miller attached to it. It didn't necessarily feel completely like a Frank Miller story, but it was close enough because it had his involvement in it. And that's really all you need from something that has Chris Claremont and the X-Men combined. I really want to see what they do with this. Do you think that it could be a return to form, or do you think that it's going to be more of the same?
I think it's going to be mostly a blend. I think bringing back the identity of the Claremont X-Men is perfectly timed since, Disney finally has Fox.
Right, that's a great point. So I was wondering about this, and maybe you feel the same way. Do you think that the massive tease of all this is a nice way to kind of like test the waters of the X-Men fan base? Let's say hypothetically, they go.
I think so.
Yeah, like let's just say the next X-Men movie that comes in under Fox is going to be Uncanny X-Men or something like that, or a tease of that sort of lineup. If this comic book run does really well, do they kind of greenlight and go, okay, this is the X-Men we want to do, let's make this movie? Or do you think that this is just completely unrelated?
No, I think the new run of the Uncanny X-Men will probably set up, in theory, will set up the next X-Men movie that comes along.
Yeah.
Probably what in 2 or 3 years maybe.
Yeah, I'd say give it about 2.5 years or so.
So you got a nice solid 2 years to establish a base where the X-Men, however they exist in the MCU,
right?
Either if they're like the same universe, some alternate universe, or some other pocket dimension, something like that.
Okay, yeah, I believe it too. So we'll see. They're going to drop it in November, and we haven't seen the X-Men in the Uncanny version, at least according to what I've been told, for over a year. So we'll see how it turns out. But I've got my hopes high, and maybe this will be the one that gets me back, because they've got like X-Men Gold, Red, Blue. I think there's a black one. I can't keep track of all these different titles. If they keep it to like one singular X-Men title, I think I'll be back on board. Next up with number 2 here, we've got some Deadpool 2 stuff. Deadpool 2 has the super duper effing cut that's coming on August 7th here in America. But according to the cut and some of the behind the scenes details that we've got, it looks like Omega Red was attached to the movie. Do you wish that Omega Red was a bigger presence in the film, or do you think that they should save him for maybe a future film?
No, I think in Deadpool 2 it was kind of a crowded space already.
Agreed.
So I don't really see how Omega Red wouldn't have fit into the story per se.
Yeah, and to me, honestly, I mean, even though I know he's squared off with Deadpool before, I really want to see Omega Red take off against Logan. I mean, Wolverine and him, they just have a history, man, and that's what I want to see. So maybe when they quote-unquote get X-Men right and it goes back over to Marvel, maybe they'll start taking more chances like that. But the other thing that I think about too, when I first heard this, was that maybe too many people would make comparisons to like Whiplash in the Iron Man 2 film. That he's too much like that with the little whips, and I mean they're tentacles and all that, but like that could be too much similarity.
I would trust the artistic direction to kind of remedy that to a degree.
Yeah, I mean
to make it distinguishable.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a more unique design compared to what they did with I can't even think of the actor's name who played him in Mickey Rourke. There you go. In Iron Man 2. Which, you know what? I thought the bird stuff in that was kind of funny. Like, where's my bird? All that.
Boyd. It's
yeah.
Boyd.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm kind of accented out tonight. But, I thought he was great. Not the most unique or passionate delivery from him. He's pretty monosyllabic and all that, but I thought, it's kind of an interesting character, even if he was kind of one note. But yeah, I would hope that when they actually bring Omega Red to the big screen, that he would be something that really gets people like, holy crap, this is Omega Red. And I don't think Whiplash was that for anyone. As far as X-Men goes, we've got one more bit, and that is that there were recent reports that came out this week that they were shelving X-Men Dark Phoenix and the New Mutants, And to that, I initially responded with, no, they're not going to be doing that. First, for common sense reasons, they already basically made these movies, including the fact that New Mutants, they ended up reshooting it because they wanted to add more to it after the praise and some critique that it had already gotten. So, that being said, you wouldn't invest all this money into these two films and go, yeah, you know what, we're just going to put it over here. All those millions of dollars, all the actors and stuff that we shot, just put it over there. That why bother? So that was my first thought. And then the reports started coming out about a day or two afterwards that no, obviously they wouldn't do that. And much of it's akin to what I had just said, which is that, it makes no sense for them financially to make a move like that. So yes, X-Men Days, Dark Phoenix and New Mutants are coming. It's just a matter of when. And we might not see them till about maybe February of next year. So it sucks that we don't get them this year because we really should have had them this year. There should have been 3 X-Men movies this year. And they should have been rolling on Gambit. But, they kept shifting it up again. And, the Fox Marvel or Fox Disney deal, whatever you want to call it, that deal didn't make anything easier there. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think it's a perfect opportunity here now to talk about number 1, which is all about the Spider-Man universe. So first of which, we've got a casting, which is Numenakar. I don't know if I pronounced his name properly, so forgive me if I screwed that up, but he'll be joining the cast of Spider-Man Far From Home, the new Spider-Man sequel that's coming. And he'll be playing a character by the name of Dimitri. Now, Brad, I'm going to put this to you. When you hear the name Dimitri, who do you think of?
Oh, I know you made fun of me before the show started. But,
I did. Yeah, that's true.
No, I got it on my second guess. No, it is actually the Chameleon.
Yeah. So what do you think Chameleon's role could end up being in this movie?
If I'm being super cruel, I think he's going to toy with. I think he's going to show up as Stark.
That would be hilarious, actually. Yeah,
hilarious, yes, but cruel because.
Well, yeah, true.
We don't really know what's going to happen in Avengers 4.
True. Huh. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And depending on whatever sort of, I don't want to say tragedy, but. Whatever happens and shakes Peter to his core, I think we're gonna see some pretty gnarly stuff from Dimitri.
Well, that actually brings up a good question. Do you think that Far From Home is going to be expressly tied into the events of Infinity War Part 2 or whatever you want to call it, or do you think that it's just going to have some small residual effect to it?
I would say it's going to be confined to how Peter absorbs and reacts to the situation, I think.
Okay. That's kind of a good, also kind of non-answer, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
It's not going to be like the next Spider-Man movie is going to be like, it's going to be talking about everything that happened in the Avengers. No, it's going to focus on Peter. It's going to focus on, the after effects of whatever happens in that movie.
Okay, I can work with that. Yeah, it's hard to say because we don't know really the ending of Infinity War Part 2. Man, I can't wait for them to actually announce the title. Actually, that's my biggest critique with all of the Marvel stuff. If they could have just taken Comic-Con to announce what the title of the next Avengers movie is going to be, now that we're out of Ant-Man mode and we're out of Infinity War mode and Black Panther's kind of a nice memory and it's already on DVD and all that stuff, like they could have just announced the title here. That would have been the biggest news of the show, honestly.
Pretty much.
But nevertheless, though, I really want to see what they do with Chameleon. I do think that it's probably going to have small residual effects. I don't think it's going to be this massive, it's going to shake Peter to his core. I know a lot of people were saying that, the events are going to make him basically the leader of some sort of new Avengers group. And I don't see that just yet. I mean, it could happen, but I think he's not necessarily in a senior kind of role yet where he dominates the conversation and has the attention on him yet. Even if Stark dies and Cap dies and Thor dies, you still have some more senior members to that team that could essentially outrank him. But I would say that whatever the effect of that movie is, it will impact him emotionally. Where, to your point, Chameleon could come in and go, oh yeah, well, let's just say he's stealing something or getting some tech or whatever. To get away, he turns himself into Stark, and then it just rocks Peter to the core, and then he like runs away while Peter's shaken emotionally or something like that. And then Mysterio comes in and, makes his life a living hell. I actually think, now that I think about it, especially if you've got characters like Chameleon, they've teased Scorpion. I don't know how big his impact will be. And Mysterio, I wonder if it'll be a lot of psychological games in that movie.
Yeah. I almost expect it to, especially with that listing of villains.
Yeah. So we'll see. What would be cool is if they use Scorpion's ability, not so much in a brutality sort of way, like they give his like venom sting or the sting that he has on his stinger, like they could use it like some sort of chemical compound to like really mess with Peter's head. I'm just spitballing here, but like I really love the idea of like just 3 characters that are just meant to fuck with Peter's head and just making a whole movie out of that. I think that'd be great.
You're such a masochist to Spider-Man.
I know. Makes me feel like a terrible person, but yeah. I like the idea of them just messing with Peter. Then in terms of the games, we had the Spider-Man game. They dropped a new little story mode trailer, and it included Silver Sable. Now, we were supposed to get this Silver Sable movie, the Silver and Black. Are you glad to at least see Silver Sable on a video game of Spider-Man's rather than get her own movie, or thoughts on that?
It's cool. The video game is going to be probably self-contained for the most part. So whatever happens in the video game isn't probably going to be tied to the MCU.
Oh yeah. There's no way. Yeah.
But it's always nice because I think video games have a much better opportunity to tell some other stories that maybe a movie or a TV show can't.
Yeah, I guess the way that I should have worded that a little bit better, but essentially, would you have rather have seen her on her own film, or do you like the idea of her being in a video game better?
I'm a little indifferent, but
okay, fair enough.
I would say, depending on how the video goes, I think the video game interpretation might be pretty good.
Yeah, same here. Then the next bit to round out all the Marvel talk here is that Spider-Verse, or Into the Spider-Verse, I should say, the upcoming animated film, has announced a huge casting list. So, Brad, have you seen how massive this whole announcement has been?
I have not.
Okay, so we mentioned some of the teases, if you will, who might be coming and who might not be. But the ones that were originally mentioned were Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir, and then you also had John. Oh, I can't think of the last name. My favorite comedian. I can't remember him. John Mulaney as Spider-Ham. But we have a whole bunch more that were announced by Chris Miller, who I believe is the director of the film. So Shamik Moore is going to be playing our new Spider-Man. Then we have Jake Johnson, obviously playing classic Peter Parker. We have Haley Steinfeld playing Spider-Gwen. We have Mahershala Ali, who, I mean, most people will know from like Luke Cage and a bunch of his other work, including the fact that he's going to be on the new season of True Detective. We have a whole bunch of others, including Brian Tyree Henry, Liev Schreiber, Luna Lauren Velez, Lily Tomlin, and then Chris goes on to say, and many more we can't tell you about yet. So what are your high hopes for casting or Spider-Verse style characters that are going to be in this universe?
Liev Schreiber, really?
Yeah. I jokingly
Does it
said,
say which one he's playing?
No, it's just a listing of who the people are going to be. Or
maybe he'll play Ben Reilly. Who knows?
What was that?
Maybe he'll play Ben Reilly or something.
I like that, actually. I think he would he'd fit that pretty well, now that you mention that. Because I was jokingly saying that to you before we got on. I was like, oh, he could play Ben. And then I realized this isn't a Peter Parker story. So, yeah, having it be Uncle Ben would be kind of silly. So, yeah, I'm just hoping that whatever comes out of this, you know, they don't throw everything at the wall. Because I like the idea of, you know, Spider-Gwen and Spider-Man Noir. But then when I start to hear Spider-Ham and, you know, whoever else. I mean, you could do like the punk rock Spider-Man from the UK. And, you know, it starts to devolve a little bit. But it's that fine line of like, how far is too far, I guess, essentially.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I kind of want them either to go balls to the wall and just be like, everyone's here. But I want to also give really cool and really popular versions of the character a chance to shine. So we'll see how it turns out. And I think that's it for Marvel this week. So DC or miscellaneous, Brad?
I'll let you pick.
You know what? I'm feeling like a little miscellaneous. Let's do it. So at our number 3 talk, we've got to bring up all the news with Sony. So Sony has some dates that they just dropped, and there's some big ones here. So that new Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie, the one that big Tarantino film, that one is supposed to be moving up now. It's going to be coming in July 26th of 2019. We're going to have Bloodshot from the Valiant universe, which as of right now, we've got Vin Diesel in that role. He'll be taking on that character in February 21st of 2020. And then October 11th of next year, we'll have Zombieland 2. So, of those, which sounds the most interesting to you?
Ooh. Zombieland 2 only if they get the original cast from the first one.
Oh, it is. Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think, yeah, that's what has me the most interested too. The only thing, and I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen Zombieland, but the very glorified cameo towards the latter half of the film might be one of my favorite cameos ever in a film. And I wish that character was able to make a return. But what happens, you'll know why.
Honestly, there's probably going to be some pop culture reference to another actor or actress, and they'll show up.
I would love it if, without kind of spoiling it, if it was like Dan Aykroyd or something like that. And then it's kind of tied to, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I think people know where I'm going with that. So, yeah, I think that'd be cool. And I think that is probably top on my list. Although I am very curious to see what Sony tries to do now with the Valiant universe now that they're losing a lot of the Marvel properties. So very curious how that goes. Brad, there was something that you wanted to pepper in actually before I got going with the Sony talk there. So did you want to mention a little bit of news about a Netflix show that you like?
Oh, yeah. Altered Carbon 2 or Altered Carbon Season 2 is going to have Anthony Mackie as the lead role.
So do you like that, or are you sad that Joel Kinnaman is not in the role anymore?
I like it. I think in the context of the story, it makes sense because in the actual like the novels.
There are novels. I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh yeah, they're based off novels.
I did not know that.
The main character actually does, quote unquote, switch sleeves or switch bodies.
Okay.
So going from a season to season, it wouldn't be a far cry to see, a different actor portray the same character. The only thing is, can Anthony Mackie portray the character the same as Joel Kinnaman did?
See, and that was the first thing that came to my mind. I love the idea that you add someone who, with all due respect to Joel Kinnaman, is more charismatic than him. But can he match that same character level? Like, can he play the character at least in a way that, because I can't remember there's the Asian American actor who takes on, or who is the core character. I think he's the one from Street Fighter and from Arrow season 1 and 2. I can't remember the guy's name, but he takes on that guy's form, and I think Joel Kinnaman matches that. Obviously in a white guy's skin, but
you're gonna shoot yourself. But it's Byron Mann.
It is Byron Mann. Yes, thank you. Yes, he and am I right on this? He was Street Fighter and in Arrow, right?
Yeah, he was Ryu.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Thank you for saying Ryu, by the way. I know everyone and their brother nowadays wants to say Ryu, but to me it's still Ryu.
What? No, it's Ryu.
Yeah. I don't want to get into all that, but yes, I've had many nerd conversations about it being Ryu versus Ryu. But nevertheless, great. Good to hear that. Do you think that he'll be able to match the same kind of tone and energy that Joel and Byron did?
I think so.
Okay.
I haven't seen a lot of his other work.
Okay.
But
well, you've seen Arrow. Oh, you're talking about. I'm sorry. Yeah. My bad. Yes. Yeah. I lost myself for a sec there. Yeah, but I know what you mean.
No, I haven't seen any of his other work, but I'm pretty sure that if they got Mackie, it's not just like a publicity stunt. It's actually because the guy can actually do the job.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Sorry about my brain fart there. Moving on. We've got our number 2 talk, which is all about all of these trailers from Comic-Con, and there was a lot. So I'm going to give a listing of all the ones that we saw. If there's any ones that we don't talk about here, I highly encourage you guys to go and check them out and see them for yourselves and assess them for yourself. So the first one we've got is Deadly Class, which is being done by the Russo brothers, set in 1987. It's kind of this school for killers. I think the school is like the King's Dominion. What do you make of this? Like this, is that for you? Are you excited for it? No. Okay. So then we've also got the Overlord trailer from J.J. Abrams, Robin Hood. We've got Bohemian Rhapsody, Glass. A Stranger Things trailer for season 3 in the Starcourt Mall, and Godzilla, Hellfest. Let's see what else, and then the Fantastic Beasts trailer. So, which of those stands out to you?
Before today, I had seen all the trailers, and I would have said Glass. But I saw Overlord trailer today, and I was geeking.
That was intense, man.
I was geeking.
So, what's your take on Overlord?
First I saw the trailer, and I'm thinking, it's just these like 4. I'm like, are they doing like some sort of like Wolfenstein-esque?
It really feels like it.
And I don't know where the source material comes from. I'll have to do my own.
I think it's an original.
Oh, the J.J. Abrams original? Oh, yeah. Dope.
Yeah.
I was getting Wolfenstein with like Nazi zombies from like Call of Duty.
Okay.
That was what I was kind of getting the feeling of.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting about it to me is for some reason, throughout the whole thing, I kept wanting to say, like, we're going to be doing one thing and one thing only, and that's killing Nazis. Like, and that's really, I mean, to put it simply, that's what I'm seeing from this trailer. It's just a glorified excuse to just
fun connection
kick ass and kill. Oh, go ahead.
Fun connection between Overlord and Inglourious Bastards.
What's that?
The French actress that was in Inglourious Bastards that owned the movie theater is actually in Overlord.
Really? Okay, I did not know that. Mm-hmm. Good call out there.
Do a little bit of math.
Yeah.
You'll find out.
Okay, I like that. You know what I thought was really funny about all this is when J.J. Abrams was talking about it, I think after it had just come out, he had to tell people that he promises that no, it is not yet another Cloverfield movie.
Actress's name is Melanie Laurent.
Okay.
She's a French actress.
That sounds about right. I think I can picture who you're talking about there now that you mention it. But yeah, so, I mean, had he not said that, I wouldn't have thought it. But now I kind of wish that it was all connected just because, like, Cloverfield is already nuts.
I doubt it.
Oh, no. I mean, like, Cloverfield's all kind of set in modern / future-ish times. So for them to mix in Nazis would really convolute everything. But I'm really excited about that. I mean, he's already working on the Star Trek thing, or Bad Robot. His production company is working on the Star Trek thing with Quentin Tarantino. So, I mean, he's got his fingers in a lot of stuff, and we'll be bringing him back up again at our number 1 talk for sure. But, you know, I'm not the biggest J.J. Abrams fan, mostly because of his nostalgia kind of vibes that he puts into a lot of his movies. Like Super 8 was good, but I felt like it was trying to be someone else's movie. It felt like it was basically like a continuation of like Spielberg's work. Like it was almost like this glorified homage to it. Not that it was bad, but it felt very much like that. That and the fact that he has all those freaking lens flares on all of his movies, and it drives me nuts. But aside from that, I think he's a very awesome and capable director. And I think this movie, it definitely seems to shy away from the lens flare, so I'm already on board for that. It just seems like a fun, kind of kick-ass movie that might not be for everybody, but there's a part of me that was missing this kind of genre, so it's fun to see something different like this. What were you gonna say?
There have been a couple of like B movies that have tried to do the same storyline, I think, and they've all been bad. I've watched a couple; they're not good.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. Like, I don't think people put the level of like production value and effort into making those kind of movies, where they all kind of feel like knockoffs of like those Tarantino Grindhouse films. And I like that Grindhouse movie. It was just like, but it felt like it was intentionally trying to be a little over the top with like, blood and guts everywhere. I don't think it necessarily needs to be that. I think it can be a genuinely enjoyable story too, but it's just how you do it. I think this might be a nice blend of good story, but with balls to the wall kind of ridiculous action. So I'm excited for it. Were there any other trailers that stuck out to you?
Well, like I said,
you said Glass.
Really good.
Yeah.
Glass
what do you make of Glass? Do you think Glass will be better or worse than any of the previous entries in this little universe he's creating?
Well, let's take stock of M. Night Shyamalan's movie career.
Okay.
It started out well, and then it tanked, and I think he's on the upswing, so I think Glass is going to be good.
Yeah. I'm just curious what his next twist is going to be in this. Like, I can't remember the name of it.
I personally think, and this is just me, but I think the girl that survived in Split is going to turn out to be some sort of, I don't want to say superhero, but it's going to be, she's going to present herself with some sort of like special ability.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of like that. Actually, I was joking with someone before we got on this, and I was saying, the big twist at the end would be that I think it's David was the hero that Bruce Willis plays, right?
Mm-hmm.
That he gets saved by someone, and it turns out to be the lady in the water. I know, totally stupid, but like, just like it's a whole Shyamalan universe or whatever, and they just have Lady in the Water come out and be like the next. It's a water-based hero. No. Yeah.
Oh God.
Why not, right? At this point, but no, sure. I really genuinely like what I'm seeing from this. Like the color palette that seems to be like that awkward, weird-looking purple that they use throughout the trailer seems to be very cool and a nice little cinematic touch. But just these three major presences on screen. My biggest disappointment with them doing all the interviews at Comic-Con was the fact that we didn't have McAvoy there to do it, because I think he was up in Toronto shooting something, maybe doing reshoots for X-Men. Who knows?
Probably.
They always try to keep that stuff under wraps, but that wouldn't surprise me. It just I wanted to hear more from him because his process with doing it. I mean, like, the multiple personalities and like the body morphisms and all that stuff that he does when he changes from person to person. It's just fascinating to watch him do that on screen. So I can't wait for this. I'm sure whatever they give us, it's going to be great. I'm just waiting for that twist, man. I can't wait to see what it is, really. For me, the trailer that really stuck out, I don't know if it's for good or for bad, but just the Fantastic Beasts. I not that it's like the end all be all, but I got invested in the whole Fantastic Beasts thing when the first one came out. And I know, especially like the Harry Potter diehards are like, well, this isn't really my kind of Harry Potter movie. And I never really got into all that. And as I'm saying this, Amanda's looking at me from across the hall. She's like, you better not say anything bad about Harry Potter. But I really genuinely...
Harry Potter's stupid.
She just gave another look. But as I'm saying this, though, I really got into the concept of all of it, because I've said before on the show, like, Harry Potter didn't really resonate with me. I was in the Lord of the Rings camp at the time because it was like, choose a side. You're either Harry Potter or you're Lord of the Rings. And I was like, I'm going Lord of the Rings. I don't want to be with this baby franchise. And then they grew up and they got to like the last few movies. And I was like, this actually could be kind of good. But I was like too far along. I was like, I don't want to make the investment, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm at this point where I'm like, Fantastic Beasts is really good. I want to see what happens with the crimes of Grindelwald and Johnny Depp playing that character. Even though I know a lot of people were like, oh, I don't want to see Johnny Depp. I actually want to see more of Colin Farrell in the role. I still think that you can make Johnny Depp very villainous. He's done it before. I'm sure he'll do a great job. And I just want to see this movie. And I told Amanda that I legitimately want to go back and watch the Harry Potter movies before all this, just because that excitement level is there for me. So she just popped around the corner to give a thumbs up. But yes, do you have any thoughts or concerns about the next Fantastic Beasts movie? Where is your take?
Never was into it.
Not even close?
No.
Okay. That's enough there. And then the only other thing that I felt was worth mentioning, because I think we all know that Godzilla is going to be a Godzilla movie. Not that that's good or bad. The director's good on that. I think Robin Hood is probably going to suck, if I'm being totally honest.
There have been too many Robin Hood movies that have come out in the last 6 or 7 years.
It just feels like King Arthur from last year, and I don't need to see that again. I mean, different characters, slightly different attributes, but it's really the same thing. So not really excited about it. And Bohemian Rhapsody, I think we're kind of all in agreement that it's just going to be good, and we can't wait to see it. So not much to say there.
It's probably going to be pretty epic.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
I mean, now that Bryan Singer's not attached to it, I feel a little bit more confident bragging about it because, well, yeah, we can talk about that another day. But really, the Stranger Things trailer, the little teaser that they did with the Starcourt Mall, have you seen this?
I did.
What do you think? Do you think that the entire season is going to be revolving around the activities in a mall, or what's your take?
I think, and you got to remember that sometimes the main villain or main storyline revolves around how the kids play on their Dungeons and Dragons board.
That's true, yeah.
So I think, and this is just my theory, I think it's going to have something to do with a labyrinth of some sort.
Oh, interesting. How so?
And I think the mall in the Upside Down is going to be some sort of labyrinth.
Okay.
And there's going to be some beast roaming around the entire time. Not necessarily a minotaur, but maybe some
I would
sort
love
of
to see a minotaur from the other world.
Maybe I would say some sort of like Lovecraftian version of a minotaur or something.
Yeah, maybe a couple extra tentacles or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something to that effect.
Yeah, sure. I actually really like that. I mean, we'll see how it all turns out, obviously. Because did you like season 2 of Stranger Things or no?
I really like season 2.
Okay, because I knew some people kind of fell out. There was that like one episode where I think she goes to like Chicago or Pittsburgh or something like that.
How she goes like straight punk.
Yeah, where she like tries to like find herself or whatever, and more people like her and all that. And
I think it's still had its place though.
Yeah, I didn't hate it either. I just was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, it made enough sense with the story, but yeah, it was kind of an odd deviation.
It made sense in the story. It wasn't like the greatest episode, period, but like it still made sense for the story itself.
I think really it's trying to set up what's going to happen with this season, or this third season for that matter. I'm sure those same sets of characters are going to come back, number, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, or how many ever of those characters there are. I'm sure they're all going to come back in their own different way and play a part in the next season. But I don't know if that was the best place to introduce them. If they had done it, maybe it should have been at the beginning of the season instead of in the middle. But I still can't wait for it. I just want to see the upside down version of the mall. Really, I just want to see like everything inverted and like carousels that are all twisted and deranged, and I think that'll be cool. So yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaways. Aside from, there's only one other one, which is Hellfest. Did you even see the trailer for that?
Nope.
It's okay. It feels like Final Destination 3 if they were just stuck in the amusement park the entire time.
Oh.
Which I'm like, I don't really need that. Yeah, exactly. Actually, it feels more like a glorified Goosebumps story. And that's about it.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so not saying too much. Let's move on to our number one, though, and that is kind of the Star Wars and Disney world right now as it is. So let's start with Disney on that front. Disney and Fox have confirmed this whole merger. Comcast has dropped out. I think we might have confirmed that bit of news on the last episode. With Disney and Fox, having this sort of control now, or I should say Disney having this sort of control now with the Fox properties, the 21st century properties, they have majority control reportedly over Sling and over Hulu, because it's mostly ABC, Disney, ESPN, that sort of stuff on the Disney side with Hulu. And then you've also got everything that Fox touches. So your FXX, FX, Fox itself, like all those animation domination shows are all over that stuff. So yeah, having 2/3 ownership over Hulu, or at least 2/3 of your content on there, I think that gives you some sort of domination in that particular market. The question is do you put your chips into that, or do you put them all on the new announced streaming service that they have, which apparently is reported as Disney Direct? What do you make of the whole merger and them moving into the streaming realm?
Ooh, I worry about a lot of the shows that got picked up by Hulu.
Yeah.
That were canceled.
Wait, which ones?
I guess, let's see. I'm trying to think of...
Oh, you're talking about
Lucifer.
like Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Lucifer was picked up by Netflix. Never mind. Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine was picked up on Hulu. Trying to think of what else. Sling. With Sling, I think you also have access to like AMC. So I don't know if you're going to be able to continue to do that. People that watch The Walking Dead may not be able to get that through Sling anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they shut the services down per se. I just think it becomes a lesser version of what the project was. Because I think they're going to put all their chips on Disney Direct, if I'm being totally honest. Because you want to have, much like we'll talk about with DC, kind of an all-in-one destination for everyone to go to. I think it would be... Oh, go ahead.
I can envision like Sling and Hulu eventually just merging into the Disney Direct in like the next, 2 years?
Yeah, it's reportedly... Well, actually, I've heard that Disney Direct might actually unveil in the next year. So, like in the fall of next year, they might drop it.
So they unveil it, and then they go, oh, yeah, it's going to start next year after they unveil it.
It's a very interesting thing with all this Disney stuff because there's so many moving parts. And this is what I was saying with Lisa over at WB when I was having the interview, is that, there's so many moving parts with DC and AT&T and with the Disney Fox stuff right now. I'm sure they're in the same boat as what she said, is that, nothing is for certain right now. Everything is, an idea of where they want it to be, but you have to let kind of like the dust settle a little bit on some of these projects before any of this stuff can actually, become a little bit more cemented. If I'm being honest, looking at the optics of it all, I think that the reality is it will become Disney Direct or whatever they change that name to. And it will probably be, as you said, an absorption of whatever they had on Hulu, even if that means taking Hulu with them and it becoming this service, but it's going to be right there. What that does for other services or other companies that happen to have their shows and properties on there, I think that makes for a really interesting conversation, because what do you do with, maybe existing CBS properties? Because CBS already has their app, which isn't doing very well. And actually, as far as trailers go, I should have probably mentioned the Star Trek one, but I didn't hear a lot of good responses from that one, so I just kind of skipped it. But CBS isn't doing too well with that streaming app of theirs, and I don't think that having Star Trek on there is really enough to save them. So do they import all of the stuff that they have over on Hulu and then bring it over to their streaming app? I mean, what do you do after, like they report, supposedly gut Hulu out?
Well, what CBS could really do if they're, if I'm being completely honest, do what CW does.
Oh yeah. Just make it free.
Make it free, or, put in your, your not your account information, but like your service provider, and then like,
like that?
you're already subscribed through your what is it? Your cable,
your network provider, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can watch it for free. Something that like ESPN does actually for like their streaming services.
TBS and FX do the same thing actually too. So I'm with you on that. Like that could be a good way to go about it, because whether you're talking CBS or NBC, for example, the question goes, where do you put like your Comcast, NBC, Universal style properties too? Because I think, I mean, if I'm being totally honest, my Hulu experience is pretty much Fox, and it's Universal stuff, or NBC, I should say. So does NBC take the majority share? I mean, does CBS come in with more properties? It's a very interesting kind of shakeup that we're in right now. But I really see Disney coming in with a powerhouse now. Now that they have all these properties at their disposal, I think it really is just a matter of time before we see this start to develop into something bigger. So let's get on to the other half, which is Star Wars related. So first of all, I want to say a big thank you to anyone who followed our post during Comic-Con. I know that it was really hard for me to get a lot of stuff out. Brad was busy working and all that stuff, and I was really the one on the floor there with all this stuff. So I tried to do some streaming, like show people like the floor and what was going on at the con, as well as tweet out some of the stuff as I was there, despite really lousy signal. But one of the things that I posted up was about, like within minutes, they had announced that there was a new version, or at least an update to where we left off in the Clone Wars series. And then they did the whole hashtag Clone Wars save. So we put it up on there. I think you've probably seen the meme where it's like a guy and a girl, and then the guy looks behind him and he's more interested in the girl that's off in the distance. So I did that. It was an image that was that new Resistance series that they're doing with Disney and Star Wars, and then him looking back at Clone Wars, because now we're getting one final season to wrap it all up, and showing what the Star Wars fans really want. And you guys got it up to like 400 likes, so I just want to say thank you for that. That was really nice. But I got a kick out of that too. It was a fun little thing. Are you excited for Clone Wars to return? Because I'm just curious. You're the big Star Wars guy. Whether you've fallen out or not, I think you'd be the best to ask.
I enjoyed watching the Clone War cartoon.
Would you rank it? Where would you rank it in terms of like? At least for you as the Star Wars fan, where would you rank it in terms of how much you like it?
How much I like it?
Yeah, like compared to any of the movies in the franchise, where would you rank it in terms of like how good you think it is?
It's above The Last Jedi. It's above The Force Awakens.
I feel like most things are above that for you.
And it's above the Clone. No, it's not the Clone Wars.
Well, the Clone Wars movie, yeah.
Attack of the Clones,
you mean? Yeah. Well, there was that Clone Wars animated movie that spun off into the series, actually, too.
Well, the animated series is better than that.
No, I know. I just wanted to tell you weren't totally wrong there. But yeah, okay, so I can see where you're at with that. Honestly, I never really got into it because at first, I was talking about Disney and animation and all that stuff, and I always hated that blocky 3D looking style where it starts off with. It's a little bit better as the series goes on, and seeing the new trailer, I was actually kind of excited for it, but it's weird to me now because I had forgotten that they didn't even finish the series, and that's why they're bringing it back to just kind of round it out. Also, I think it's a bit of fan service because, fans are kind of on the outs right now with Star Wars, and this is a nice little way to bring them back. But they went from this show into Rebels, and I watched Rebels all the way through, and I loved Rebels. I actually thought that was a fun show, and I would recommend that to pretty much anyone, especially if you like the original trilogy. But it's weird to me that they would go back to this project now after basically kind of like skipping this period, because it goes through Clone Wars, then they kind of stop, as we've just said, and then it jumps ahead just a few years in time, and then you've got Rebels. So now this is weirdly like kind of what they did with the movies, where it's like, well, yeah, we're doing this new trilogy, but we're also going to go back and we're going to do this movie that's about how they stole the plans for the Death Star. And I'm like, I guess I'm excited for it, but I just don't know what the creative process is where they're thinking that this is the thing we need to go back and do right now.
Hashtag Obi-Wan movie in the works.
I hope so. I really do. I want it. Ever since we left off with, I was just talking about it, Rogue One. Well, I pitched it actually mildly when we were talking about our reacts for that episode. Is I want to see him go, and I want to have him square off against Vader. If it's on, I can't think of Vader's planet that he's on. My brain is going away right now. What's the name that he's on? It's I want to keep saying.
You're talking about the one that he has his like
the molten
castle
planet
on or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's
It's all right.
Remember it.
It'll come back to us. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, I wanted to see them square off there, like have one big fight, almost returning to where they had left off in episode 3, because they fought there as well. But yeah, I think that would have been a cool way to do an Obi-Wan sequel or spinoff for that matter. And we didn't get that. So, I mean, if it happens down the road, great. We'll see how that happens. But I just want to see what Clone Wars does to kind of round things out, because maybe we'll get that kind of, final pairing of Anakin and Obi-Wan, and that will be enough to satiate fans with Obi-Wan's story. But I just genuinely want to see that movie, if I'm being honest. I mean, do you have any thoughts or excitement for Clone Wars as they round out this last season? Little things that you want to see them wrap up?
I honestly think that they start to go into like how Obi-Wan started living on Tatooine.
That would be cool. I'd like to see that. I think that would be a nice way to kind of, again, bridge that story together in a nice way. Mm-hmm. I was excited that they decided to show Ahsoka Tano, who was such a big part of that series. She's also revealed in Rebels, which I think that's the funniest part of it all, because there's that feeling that like she probably died at some point, and that's why we don't see her in like the new trilogy or anything like that. But she shows up in Rebels, so making a reveal of her being in this show is like, well, we know she lives, so why is this like a big wow? Like why are we freaking out about this moment? We know that she's alive. She lives on, for another 10, 20 years. But that being said, though, I thought it was cool because we're at San Diego Comic-Con, and sure enough, they have all these different little Star Wars booths, and then they were all authorized by Lucasfilm and Disney and all that. And I go up to the one, and for $20, I got Ashley, who does the voice of the character, a signature of her Funko Pop. It was not even released yet, but they only had like I think it was like 10 to 15 of them in stock, and it was like a San Diego Comic-Con Funko Pop exclusive. And she signed it and everything, and it was great. So I've got it in like this little cardboard box, well preserved and all that stuff. But I don't know. Maybe when the show actually drops, I might sell it or give it away to one of our fans or something like that. So we'll see. But I just thought that was cool, and it's got my hype levels up a little bit as well. Last bit, which may or may not upset Brad, and I'm already testing the waters here, but we need to talk about the next Star Wars movie, and that is Episode 9, which has no title other than Episode 9 at this point. But they gave us our casting. And aside from the fact that we already know Billy D. Williams is coming back to the franchise, which I am super excited about, they did something in this casting report that I am curious to see how Brad responds. And it's that Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill are returning for the movie. Brad, I will give the floor to you.
Oh, God. So, two things. Number one.
Go for it.
Either they saved all of the good footage that they didn't use in The Last Jedi, and J.J. Abrams is like, Bran, I'm just going to use all your good footage you decided to cut. So...
Okay, and for the record,
movie.
just so in case people don't know what they're doing with Carrie Fisher to bring her back, because they're like, how is Carrie Fisher coming back? Well, I will tell you. They apparently had a whole bunch of unused footage that was cut from The Last Jedi, and they're with Billie Lourd, her daughter's blessing. They have been given access to use that as additional footage for this film. So how that works, I'm not sure, but hopefully it works out. But go on, Brad.
The second thing I thought of was they're going to make CGI Leia a thing.
I don't think it's going to be CGI Leia. It sounds like they really want to get it close to her as...
I forgot a third one. If they make her a Force ghost, I'm going to be pissed.
See, that's where I was going to go with it. I think this might be what I said to you, is that I think it could go Force ghost. The more I've thought about it, I think it's probably not going to go that way, because she didn't get the same kind of training, unless they expound on it and they say that she did, maybe quote unquote off camera. But the idea that she would be a Force ghost without the proper levels of training doesn't seem like it would make sense here. So I'm going to let that one slide. But I do think what they'll probably do is a combination of there'll be like an overhead speaker thing that will say like, everyone get to your stations or something like that. And it'll be her saying that, and then maybe it'll be a couple scenes where she's like, okay, I need you to go out and blah 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 blah, and then maybe they'll cut away from her face as she's saying it, and then flow the dialogue in such a way that it makes it seem like she's still saying it, but it might be slightly modified. I think there are ways that you can do it cleverly, but I don't know exactly how they're going to do it, obviously. How about the Mark Hamill part of it all? Are you excited to see Luke come back, or what are you expecting from this part?
That part's probably going to be Force Ghost. I don't see it working any other way. Unless he teleported to another part of the galaxy.
Right. I was going to say. Although I can almost imagine, like, I know a bunch of people who are way more into Dragon Ball Z than I ever was, and I'm just picturing them already making, like, there's a move that they have that's called, like, I think it's instant teleportation or transportation or whatever, where they touch two fingers to their head.
It's instant transmission.
A transmission, that's it. Okay, see, I'm a lapsed DBZ fan. But anyways, they touch two fingers in their head and then they just disappear. I'm just picturing a bunch of them making that joke if, like, he appeared somewhere else in a physical form. I could see two things out of the Luke thing that would make me happy. One, him being a Force ghost and then just guiding Rey, and I think that would be fine in my opinion. On the other hand, you could also have him essentially quote unquote teleport and be in like this severely weakened state where he's like really old man Luke, you know what I mean? But whatever the case may be, I think for me, this is upsetting, and on the inverse or on the reverse of that, I think maybe you might feel like this might be a saving grace. I don't know. But I liked where they ended things. I enjoyed what The Last Jedi gave us. You could have easily have just said Leia died off screen or something of that effect. You didn't have to have her continue on in this movie. You didn't have to use old footage. And in the same sense with Mark, he went out so beautifully as Luke. Like he went out the way that he began that movie. And I told you about this before, like with the sunset and everything like that. And I thought that there was such a beautiful way to show the beginning of his journey and the end of his journey. And the irony of this all, and that's why I wanted to tie this part in specifically, is that the tagline is the final installment of the Skywalker saga. So what do you think that means? Do you think that means Luke's journey? Do you think that means Kylo Ren's journey? Where do you put the Skywalker of it all into context?
I think that's a culmination of it. I think this is the last Star Wars movie that we have that deals specifically with the Skywalker family.
Okay. That hurts to even say that, but yes, I don't know. Like, do you want to see it become kind of Rey's story here on out, or
no? Absolutely not. No.
Okay, all right.
No. God, no. I would rather have it go with Kylo, to be perfectly honest.
You think he becomes a hero in his own right, or?
I think I would actually like to see him become a Grey Jedi.
Oh yeah. See, that's what I'm worried about the most, is that people will go into episode 9 doing what they did with episode 8. It's like, I have all these theories, and like none of them are what people think they're going to be, and then they're severely disappointed when the theories don't match up. What I will say going into episode 9, what might be the advantage is that the stock has gone so low because so many people were disappointed that their theories didn't work out, that they're going to go in like, I just don't care. And then like, wow, I like Star Wars again. That's my greatest, that's my greatest wish for episode 9. And knowing the way that JJ drums up nostalgia, which that's what I'm most disappointed about with this, honestly, is the fact that like, oh, hey, you were disappointed with 8, but here's JJ Abrams, and he's going to give you Luke, and he's going to give you Leia, and he's going to give you Lando, which, I mean, all I personally needed was Lando to be happy, but, if he makes a competent story that doesn't feel like we're retreading, let's just say Return of the Jedi, for example, in this case, I'll be happy with it. I don't need to see another Death Star. Give me the Knights of Ren. Give me some sort of conclusion to Rey's story, and I'm happy. That's all I really want at this point. Mm-hmm. I don't even care about who Snoke was. I don't necessarily care about the spark that lights the galaxy and all that stuff. I just need to see a couple little things, and that's enough for me for Star Wars, aside from like these little side things. And then I can go into Star Wars hibernation for a while and give it a rest for a bit. But I don't think it's going to necessarily give me everything I want, but, that's my little wish list there. Final thoughts on Star Wars before we head over into DC?
I got nothing.
You got nothing. All right, well then DC it is, which is a whole lot of something. So here we go. All right. I loved Comic-Con because DC was everywhere. And as I mentioned before, I did get to talk with Warner Brothers Television, which was a great conversation. In our big talk, I'll bring up some of that interview too. So first of which I want to say is TV talk, as we always like to do. And I am super excited because Jeff Johns announced that on top of all the stuff that we're getting with the DC universe, the upcoming streaming, there's going to be a Stargirl TV series. And this makes me so happy for so many reasons. First of all, I love Stargirl. I think she's a great character. Personally, I loved all the Golden Age characters, as we mentioned before. And Starman was, obviously the precursor to her character. So I always like to see when someone loosely associated with the JSA is introduced in some fashion or another. Like, I thought they dropped the ball in Legends of Tomorrow season 2, I think it was, because they introduced them, but they were like, oh, well, we're going to leave them back in the past and we're going to take 2 characters and we're going to bring them into the future. And that's what we're going to do with the Legends and with the JSA. So slightly disappointed there, but an entire show based around Stargirl. And some of the synopsis was talking about her dealing with the fallout of the JSA. So I don't think they're all going to necessarily be dead, but I think she's going to try and reassemble that team. But it's really her story. So that has me excited. Hopefully they'll kind of mix in Stars and Stripes, which is, it's kind of a longer story, but basically it's like this robotic character that was kind of like her other half, and then they fought crime, that sort of thing. Yeah, I figured you weren't up on Stargirl, so I wanted to get.
I barely knew who she was.
I know that's like when people try and describe like Miss Marvel to me. I'm like, well, I know a few things, but as far as Stargirl goes, I'm excited. Jeff Johns attached. It's going to go to the streaming apps. They're going to have a lot of creative license to do what they want. Then as far as additional projects that were announced for TV, we've got Batwoman, which is going to come over to the CW side of things. They have not cast who they want for Batwoman yet, but we know that she's going to make her first appearance and kind of a backdoor pilot of sorts this season during the crossover episode that they're going to do for all the CW shows. What are you looking for from Batwoman when they introduce her? Anything specific?
Oh God. To be perfectly honest, I don't really know a whole lot about Batwoman.
Okay. Cassandra Cain is a really cool character. She's LGBT. She has some great storylines. She's a little bit more ruthless than you'd expect from, she's not Batgirl. I'll just say that much. She doesn't pull punches. She's pretty badass. So to see her, operating out of Gotham, how they work that around Batman and the CW aspect of it all will be very interesting. But they've made enough references to Gotham before on Arrow and Flash and all that. So I'm sure we're going to get a decent enough explanation as to what's going on in Gotham and why she operates in there. But I really just want that casting at this point. And to any of those fans who have been like, oh, it should be so-and-so who already exists on the DC TV stuff. Yeah, I like that the fan enthusiasm is there, but like the logistics of making Supergirl's sister played by Chyler Lee who's the other Danvers sister, to make her, just because she's lesbian, into Batgirl or into Batwoman doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not right for the character. This Batwoman has apparently been operating in Gotham for quite some time, so none of that would make sense.
Interesting tidbit. It was Batman, but because of Flashpoint, it flipped to Batwoman.
There you go. Okay. I don't hate that. That's not a bad idea. I mean, it ruins any opportunity for Batman to appear in the future from happening. But...
Hey, blame Barry, man.
Barry, always screwing up that timeline. But we got a whole bunch of trailers for the rest of the CW series. So have you seen any of these right off the bat, Brad?
I saw the Arrow.
You did? Okay. So what do you make of Oliver in prison?
Very interesting.
Right?
I'm not sure. Well, first off, I'm pretty sure I know who's the Green Arrow while Ollie's in prison.
I would like to hear. What is your theory?
I'm pretty sure it's Diggle. Pretty sure.
I've actually heard that it might be Roy.
Ooh.
Yep. But it could be Diggle as well. I'm not opposed to either theory.
Well, the thing is, it's only Diggle if Diggle learns how to use a bow.
Right. He's still got the shakes from last season. And
that might be... Oh, Roy does fit.
Because Roy has been added to a series regular for this season, so I think it makes sense.
Oh, it's Roy.
Yeah, I think so too.
Roy.
Just throwing that out there. But anyways, so I thought it was cool. We get to see a return of Richard Dragon, who was not taken care of at the end of last season. So he's still making Team Arrow's life a living hell. I thought it was cool that in the prison scene, we see some familiar faces. I think it's Brick, if I'm not mistaken, who is played by... Oh, I can't think of the guy's name, but the one who played Juggernaut in it's Vinnie Jones. Vinnie Jones, right?
Yeah, Vinnie Jones.
I think he played Brick in the show, and I think he's returning in the prison. We see him. We see Cody Rhodes returning as the character he played. And then I can't think of the guy's name honestly, but I remember him from Freddy vs. Jason. He was the shorter guy with kind of like the...
Oh, he's the one that uses the claws. It's
Who?
It's the...
He uses claws? I don't think so.
It was like in season 2, I think.
Did he? Oh, I don't remember that.
Because he's like a quasi knockoff Wolverine.
No, not him. I'm not talking about Michael Jai or Michael Jai Courtney, or I forget the guy's name, but no, I'm not talking about him.
Okay.
Because that's Bronze Tiger. I know that one. No, I was talking about the guy's name is, I think it's Brendan Fletcher. And he was in Freddy vs. Jason. That's how I first was exposed to the guy's character. I just can't remember what he did on Arrow previously, but he shows up in the prison stuff in this trailer. So I'm curious to see what he ends up doing. But essentially, it's like their adaptation of what the Supermax script that I had mentioned before, the unfilmed Arrow kind of movie that they wanted to do, which was basically Green Arrow gets sent to prison and all of his former enemies come out to make his life a living hell, while he tries to kind of escape the prison as well. And that's why I thought this was kind of cool. It's like, hey, you're really kind of doing it on a smaller kind of TV budget, but still, I think it looks cool. Meanwhile, Team Arrow is trying to struggle to stay alive. Richard Dragon's trying to kill Oliver's son, and I think it'll be a good season, although I'm not sure how it totally ends. But I think I'm most excited about the next one, which would be The Flash. And probably for a silly reason, I know. But the fact that Chris Klein is going to be the main villain of this season. What do you think about him playing Cicada?
I think of him from all the goofy roles he's been in.
I know, right? Yeah. What's your favorite role of his?
Oh, God. Oh, what was the last... I don't know. Was it a movie I saw with Chris Klein? Oh, God, what was it? It was... What movie was it?
Well, I'll tell you mine while you're thinking about it, because Amanda reminded me that he was in Just Friends, and I was like, oh, that's such a good one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with Amy Smart and Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
He's done some really interesting work over the years. I started looking through some of his IMDb because for a while there, I kind of felt like he might have fallen off a bit, and I was a little concerned in that regard. But he'd been doing some steady stuff. But I think this is a nice little return to form for him. I'm really curious to see what they ended up doing with him this season as Cicada. I feel like they're going to essentially try and steal his Flash's life force. Or maybe his Speed Force for that matter. But yeah, I think this can make for a very interesting season because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I felt like last season, aside from maybe one or two episodes, felt like it was just kind of going through the motions. And I've said this before, but the DC TV series on the CW, they feel like every season they focus on like one or two that they really want to put all their chips on, and the other ones just kind of like just are like even level. Like, yeah, they're doing a thing. It's kind of fun. All right, well, that was great. Moving on. And I think that Flash might be a return to form this season. I think that they're going to try and invest a little bit more than, just making another smart guy who's trying to like outthink the Flash or outspeed the Flash. I think there's going to be a little bit more to it this season. On that note, we saw in the trailer that they introduce their daughter, Barry's daughter and Iris's daughter, and then she presents him with the ring, which I think a lot of fans wish that they'd see more of that. So she comes from the future, gives him the ring that his suit's in. So for Flash fans, that's kind of a big like Easter egg thing that we'd love to see. What are your thoughts overall for the Flash this season? Are you excited?
I'm indifferent. I've never really been into the Flash, so. Fair
enough. Yeah, well, because you've watched pretty much only Arrow, right, as far as the CW shows go?
Arrow, most of Legends of Tomorrow.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. And then next up we have Legends of Tomorrow, and that's a cool one. I feel like is worth mentioning because Tom Wilson, who most people will probably know as Biff from the Back to the Future movies, is coming in to play Hank Haywood, the original Steel. So I think it'll be interesting to see him suit up, as it were. Maybe he won't have the powers. I hope he will, just for comic book accuracy and all that. But yeah, I'm excited to see him join the team. They already have a pretty well-rounded group as it is. They added Constantine. He's a regular now for this season. As I mentioned on previous episodes, we're going to be losing Kid Flash, Wally West, at some point in the first few episodes of the season. But it's not a complete goodbye. They're just, changing up the roster, as it were. And then a new kind of out of the blue casting of Ramona Young. She'll be playing a character who's not a superhero as far as we know, by the name of Alaska Yu. So I think she's just going to be joining them on their journey this season. We'll see how that goes. Continuing on with the DC TV stuff here, we've got Sam Witwer, who people probably have seen him over CW shows and probably over on the Collider Network that we've talked about before with their schmoes. The trivia showdown that they do. He's always on there. He's actually joining Supergirl this next season as Agent Liberty, who is a great character from the comics. Pretty heavily tied in with the Superman mythos, especially the 90s characterization. And I'm actually excited to see what they do with the next season of Supergirl. I felt like last season was just, again, kind of a ho-hum one like that. And, the Flash were just kind of so-so. So I'm ready to see them, come full force. We talked about the fact that Supergirl has this brand new suit. Like they're going to be teasing some of Red Sun for her in this next season. So I think they're going to be going full force with this next season of Supergirl. Interestingly enough, too, I don't know if we mentioned this on a previous episode, but because their content is constantly expanding on the CW, they're going to be moving Supergirl and the reboot now of Charmed to Sunday nights. What do you think about them moving Supergirl to Sundays, and are you excited for the next season?
Oh, that's not good.
I don't think it's the death knell because I think this is an investment by them. I mean, Sunday is not really well praised.
Walking Dead.
What?
Walking Dead plays
yeah.
on Sunday nights.
Actually, I didn't bring up Walking Dead in Miscellaneous, and I feel I should have. What do you think about Walking Dead? Do you think Walking Dead has that oomph that it once did, that it will kind of capitalize on the audience?
It lost it 2 seasons ago.
See, yeah, and that's where I'm kind of at. I'm like, well, Walking Dead is kind of slowly phasing its way out, with all due respect to them, even though I still kind of enjoy the show. Maybe it's not the threat that it once was on Sunday nights.
We'll see.
It's up to you. I mean, it's just a thought, but yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see, like you said. So excited for Supergirl. Hopefully this season's better than the last. And last bit of CW TV, we've got Black Lightning. There was a new trailer. I gotta be honest, even though I enjoyed Black Lightning last season, I didn't feel like there was very much to this trailer. Just kind of him standing up for the streets and all that, and being a kind of traditional crime fighter. I get that, but I didn't feel like there was a whole lot going on here, and they didn't add any new castings as far as I know. So, again, excited for Black Lightning. Hope it's another great season, but we'll see how it goes. Let's move outside of the CW. We've got Gotham. Not a trailer yet. They are shooting right now. They've announced the first 4 episodes. We've got Year Zero, Trespassers, Penguin Our Hero is the 3rd episode, and then the 4th episode is Ruin. What do you make of those? Any reading between the lines with all those for you? What do you think?
Year Zero kind of peaks out there.
Oh, I think it'll definitely be an inspiration of the comics. No doubt there. So I'm sure like Year Zero in the comics is kind of like this wasteland of Gotham, which is where we leave the end of last season without going too spoilery about it. So I think that Year Zero makes perfect sense given what we know. The whole Penguin thing is kind of interesting to me. Trespassers was interesting because on the tweet where they announced it, they had they can't use guns because there's no emoji for guns anymore. It's just like a little squirt pistol, but they had a bunch of squirt pistols around the Trespassers one. So maybe there's going to be a lot of gunfire in that one. It'll be people, I'm guessing that in Year Zero, the first episode, there's going to be territories carved up in Gotham. Like this is going to be, Mr. Freeze's territory, and this is going to be Penguin's neck of the woods, and et cetera, et cetera. And then Trespassers, the follow-up episode will probably be, people kind of crossing over into other people's lives and how it becomes this all-out warfare in Gotham. And then probably by the third episode, we're going to have Penguin probably being the one who calms that conflict. That's why he'll become the hero. And then Ruin might be, that hero being short-lived. And then the Ruin being that everything falls back into chaos again. So I'm not sure, but I'm very excited for Gotham. I know we only have a half season to go before it wraps up completely, but what do you take on Gotham right now? Do you think that we're going to get the best season ever, and it's going to end on a beautiful note, or do you think that they should just try and do their best to keep it going because there's more to tell?
I think I think the show title Gotham goes away, and then it'll just switch to Batman.
That would be nice. And the reason I worded my question like that was because there's such a movement right now for Save Gotham. So we talked about this in the last episode. They ended up saving Lucifer, and they put it over on Netflix. The idea now is that they could actually transport Gotham over onto the DC Universe, the new streaming app, and bring the rest of the show there. And you could just make a Batman series, and I think it would be fantastic to do that. Again, will they do it? Won't they do it? There's all that stuff. But
what would you call it? Not instead of Batman. What would you call it? Like the Caped Crusader or something like that?
You could. Something that kind of gives that whole Dark Knight without saying Batman kind of thing to it. Which
you could just call it. You could just call it the Knight.
Yeah. Oh, Knight. Okay, I could see that. Yeah.
Because he says, "I am the Knight. I am Batman."
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you do. I mean, and you could even still use the term Gotham because it's owned by Warner Brothers, so it's yeah. You could even do like Gotham with a little subtitle. Like sometimes it'll be like Legends Rise or something like that, and you put the subtitle in just to indicate that it's the new season. Either way, I love that cast, and I said it on previous episodes. I just don't want to see that cast go away because especially that incarnation of the Riddler, what they've done with Jerome or Jeremiah, without going too spoilery for those who don't know that. But what they've done with Cameron Monaghan in that Joker-ish role, and then doing Riddler and doing Penguin so well, that's the kind of stuff that I've always wanted to see a live-action Batman go up against. Now, granted, are we getting one thing versus the other? Yeah, but at least we're getting those live-action versions of these awesome villains kind of fleshed out in a way that maybe one day down the road we'll have Batman take on a fully realized version of the Riddler that actually emanates from the comics. And yeah, I don't want to get too long-winded about it, but yeah, that's always been my dream, is that they do a really good Batman movie that has like a Poison Ivy or a Clayface or some of these really more fantastic characters instead of it being Batman versus Joker for the umpteenth time. So, yeah. So best of luck to Gotham. I can't wait for this next season. I think it'll be great. Then we have Krypton, our last of the DC TV shows, announcing that for season 2, they're bringing on Lobo. The main man is headed to Krypton.
Interesting.
Yeah. We were talking a few episodes back about the fact that Michael Bay was reportedly going to be bringing Lobo to the big screen. And while we all laughed at that because that sounded absolutely ridiculous, which also would be kind of Michael Bay's MO, is to do something ridiculous. The idea didn't seem to really stick, but this does. The idea that Lobo could be just another alien floating around out there that gets involved in the ongoing saga that is Krypton. Because I think it's not necessarily about Krypton blowing up at this point. Next season, it sounds like they're going to really unleash Doomsday. I don't think Brainiac's going to be as big a presence. But with Doomsday kind of unleashed, Lobo being there, and the fact that Zod is now taking a bigger presence in the series, I think season 2 looks like it might be really action-packed and a lot of fun. So are you excited to check out Krypton, or have you seen season 1 yet?
I'm just happy that Michael Bay doesn't get his Lobo movie now.
I'm pretty happy about that too. I mean, there's a part of me that just out of sheer curiosity would have loved to have seen what it would have been, but I don't think it would have been good by any means. So,
yeah.
Unless it was like Pain and Gain, but in space, then I probably would have liked it. But I digress. There is a little bit of CW thing that I wanted to quick pepper in here. It's just the animated kind of stuff. We've got the Ray. While we were at Comic-Con, they dropped season 2, so you guys can go and stream that right now as we're recording this. So you guys can find that over on the CW Seed. So it's right there. I think the episodes are only like 2 minutes long a piece, so it's a real quick digest. But it's a fun way to give you more DC superheroes if you were looking for something like that. And then Young Justice got a season 3 trailer as well. So a whole lot there. The most interesting thing of note with Young Justice is the fact that they're bringing on new heroes, essentially the outsiders from the comics, with a slightly revamped look to them, including the character Geoforce, who I'm hearing good things about. I think that a lot of the storyline is going to be about him kind of like being a hero that doesn't necessarily want to be a hero and finding his purpose and all that. Amongst all of the Young Justice nonsense that we're already used to. So that should be great. But that is our TV talk. And I want to get on to number 2 because that is a big one. Or I'm sorry, to number 3, actually, because that is a big one continuing on from our rumor mill earlier. We mentioned the Joker. Remember that whole Joker thing we just talked about?
I wish I didn't.
Me too. So on that note, the Joker is reportedly coming next year, a month before Wonder Woman 84, on October 4th. And they're apparently trying to cast Zazie Beetz as this like down and out mother, who kind of feels sympathetic towards the Joker, whether it's as the Clown Prince of Crime or in his human form before he becomes the Joker. We're not sure on that yet. And then Robert De Niro as a talk show host for Gotham that apparently is involved in Joker's life one way or another. So what are your thoughts on Joker as of right now? Because I don't feel like we went through it completely on the rumor mill part. Does any of that sound good? Like, do you like the idea of Robert De Niro being on it? Yeah.
No.
I'm right there too. I don't know what we're looking at. It doesn't sound good to me in any way. Like, I mean, yeah, great. Robert De Niro, you could put him on anything and I'm sure it'll be great. But what does this do for Joker? I don't know why you need him to be a talk show host. Why does a talk show host have to impact the Joker's life?
And where does the talk show host get so much coke?
Right. Yeah. And then that too, that's a whole nother thing. And like, if this actually happens, great. But I just, I don't even know if I want to say great. Good, I guess. I'm genuinely worried about this movie. And before I wasn't, because I was like, oh, this is just another like Birds of Prey movie that they're going to talk about and it's never going to happen. But hey, if the pages and the details that I've seen are true, I mean, they're at least heavily considering this, so we'll see. So I just wanted to talk about that at 3. At number 2, let's talk about some stuff that makes us more happy. We had 2 amazing trailers at Comic-Con. One was Aquaman, the other one was Shazam. And instead of doing some big trailery breakdown, because I'm sure we'll do it as both movies come out, we'll do it for their next trailers. But for these Comic-Con ones, what was the biggest one between these 2 for you, Aquaman or Shazam?
Shazam felt really different.
Like, in a good different way, or in like a way that has you worried?
In a good way. Definitely. I hasten to say the word. It felt kind of a Marvel style.
Oh no, it's fine. I think that was part of the intention. Yeah.
But it's a stark contrast to what DC movies has been over the past 5-6 years.
Yep. Yeah.
It's a needed change of pace, I think. And
yeah, I would agree.
It suits this character perfectly.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. So, I was going to bring some of this up with the Comic-Con interview that I had, but when I'm sitting down and I'm talking about it, I realize that, yes, I'm talking with someone on the television side, that it doesn't necessarily overlap into the film side, but we did discuss a little bit of film projects and how things tonally were set. And when I'm talking with her, she says to me that there is an obvious change in the guard. There's a shift that's going on right now, and that shift is done on purpose because they, you can, as they say, read the tea leaves. You can see what's going on and how people are responding, and they did this intentionally. Plus, the reality is you can never really do Shazam as like the way that they did Batman and Superman. I mean, you could try, but that character is so much more lighthearted and friendly and childlike, even though that sounds a little obvious to say, than either Batman or Superman. Like, Superman's had dark moments, but like Shazam has never been a character who ever really went to that place. He's always been, he's had the childlike wonder no matter what he did. And that's kind of the endearing quality of that character. So I think it makes perfect sense. And the fact that they're basically shooting this like Big, but with a superhero movie, I think it's perfect. I love it. Any favorite parts from the trailer for you, or?
Probably the part where he finds out he's bulletproof.
Oh yeah. No, it took me a second, but I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, no, that one's a good one too. For me, it was probably them doing like the test thing where they're like, test one, and like he's trying to see how high he can jump, and then he falls back on the half pipe or whatever. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for it. And my favorite thing about the trailer too is that it's still connected to the DC Films universe, like all the Batman v Superman, Man of Steel, all that stuff. He's such a fanboy himself. He's a kid who's inspired by these heroes, and I think the beauty of this film will show how the people of that world view Batman and Superman, and it'll give it some better context, and hopefully, even if it's like a soft retconning of sorts, it will kind of paint a lighter picture on that conflict that we saw in Batman v Superman. So it won't look as dark. You can see it from someone else's perspective and go like, oh, I understand, but like, look at how cool Batman's batarang is. And, Superman, this was his thing from like when the bullet shot him and then they bounced off. And how cool is this? So hopefully it will lighten up some of the darkness that, some people were so hung up on for so long, and still kind of are, to be honest. But I think this will do a lot of right for the DC universe to help make it a well-rounded kind of area where you can have the darkness, you can have the light, you can have some stuff that's kind of in the middle, which brings me to Aquaman. I think Aquaman feels a little bit of a product of the old, but still a little bit more lighthearted and colorful, like what they're trying to do with Shazam. I think Aquaman has a beautiful scope. I think it's going to give people a world that they probably hadn't seen, I'd say debatably, since the opening credits of Man of Steel. And I think it's probably going to expound on that even more. And just the one thing I want to bring up real quick with Aquaman is every person I've heard who's a Marvel fan go, oh my gosh, they're ripping off Black Panther. Oh my gosh, they're ripping off Thor. They're not ripping it off. There's undoubtedly similarities no matter what you do. I guarantee you when Shazam comes out, they're going to be like, oh, well, Shazam, now that I think about it, it kind of reminds me of Ant-Man or something like that. The way that he makes a bunch of jokes. There's going to be some overlap no matter what with some of these heroes. Like, when Shazam comes out, people who aren't familiar with Shazam are probably going to compare it to Superman, like the original, like Superman the movie, the Christopher Reeve version, just because he's got a red suit, he's got a symbol on his chest, and he's smiling and having a good time. These sorts of comparisons are inevitable, and people are going to be ridiculous about them. Sometimes you just kind of laugh about it or look past it because people are going to say silly things, and that's just it just is what it is. But I think Aquaman's going to be great. I mean, I haven't seen anything of it. Maybe that fish man. I didn't need to see that fish man. I don't know why they. You're
talking about the other race?
Yeah, and we talked about them a little bit on the last episode. I was like, oh yeah, they could be good, and it's going to be I want to say played by David Oyelowo, but that's not right. I forgot the guy's name. It doesn't matter. But the idea that they're going to have this additional race of sea people, sea creatures, essentially, is fine. But, you know, I don't even think they're from the comics. There's actually a villain with the same name as this. I think it is like Fishman or something like that. It's like an old character that they don't even really use anymore. But, like, I don't know if it's supposed to tie in with that race or whatever. But, like, I just thought that it didn't need that. It was just like adding another group to kind of add scope to the universe, and it doesn't really need to be there, but we'll see. The movie's coming out in a few more months now, which is, I feel like we've been waiting on this one for forever because it's the only DC movie this year aside from Teen Titans Go to the Movies. So we'll see. I still have high hopes for it though. I think it's going to be a great movie. But yeah, between the two of them, Shazam is your go-to movie?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Same here. So let's get off of those trailers and talk about the number one. And that is basically the DC streaming app, as well as Titans, which had a lot of controversy as of this week. So the first thing I want to say with Titans, the thing that everybody's talking about is the fact that Robin says, "Fuck Batman." And okay, don't take that part so seriously. I can understand why people would, but I've got to choose my words wisely here. What I found out from Warner Brothers when I talked to them was that was added to the trailer and it was done for an effect. And that effect was to get people talking about their show. Now, granted, I could understand why a lot of people would have their hangups about this, that, or the other thing in that trailer. Oh, they're going dark. They're trying to do the Snyderverse on TV. Yes and no. What they're trying to do, first of all, is get everybody talking about it, because to them, it's kind of like, and I mentioned this to her. I always like Eric Bischoff on, in the world of wrestling and all that stuff. And he had a book that's Controversy Creates Cash. And it's kind of that same concept here. It's the idea that you get so many people talking about this thing because this is not what I thought this character would do, or that's not what I thought they would do, or what they would look like, and getting interest drummed up in a way that's so different from what you expect it to be, because people think, oh, Titans has to be like Teen Titans Go or the early 2000s Titans series, and that's what it has to be. And if it's not that, then boom, it's just not the Titans that I know, so I have to hate it. That being said, they went and they were like, you know what, we're going to give something for people to talk about. And to boil it down, what Titans is really going to be essentially Arrow Season 1 with a little bit more brightly colored costumes. And it's going to be essentially the Titans not knowing each other, but kind of finding each other throughout the course of this season, and then finding like a purpose for all themselves. You're going to have one who's essentially like a loner, another one who's tormented by demons, and they're all going to slowly find a purpose, so that by the end of the season, you're going to see it kind of slowly develop into that, like what we know the Flash and Arrow and all those CW shows to kind of be, but without some of the relationshipy melodrama mixed in there. And as far as what's going on with Starfire, I need to bring this up as well. So in the interview, we talked about some of the details of Starfire, because the controversy is, why did they have an African-American actress playing an alien who in the comics was like orangish, almost pinkish skinned? And there's a lot of reasons why they did what they did. The first of which, the original creation for Starfire was based on Naomi Campbell, who is an African-American actress / model. And that was their original thought process going into this. And they knew that it was going to cause some level of backlash, but the fans didn't realize that. They just thought that, this was all for diversity reasons or for racist reasons and all this stuff. And the reality is, they did this because it was actually a respectful homage to the creators themselves, who had made the character just like this. And then the costuming comes into play when they talk about her as well. They're like, oh, well, okay, I can understand that. I can understand why she's African-American. But what about this costume? Why does she look like a streetwalker? Why does she look like a hooker? She does, but that's not her outfit. You're going to see her outfit by the end of the season, because there's a reason why they are only showing this outfit so far. This is not her only outfit. They have to reveal some things later on. And I've found out through the people I talked to that there are more things planned down the road. And there is an actual authentic costume that they're trying to give her. So, yes, they're in kind of like street clothes now, aside from Robin, who Robin's been doing this for a while. So that's why he has his outfit. But they're going to develop as a group. And the thing that people don't understand about television, and it's something that I've come to, adapt to and understand over time, is for them, it's all about an arc. Like, you can't have a fully formed, like, Teen Titans Go team in the first episode of a season. Like, if you do that, then, like, where do they go from there? Where is the chance for character growth? Where is the chance for anything to develop with these characters? So they have to start off in this bad place so that they can get to a good place to kind of simplify it. And I realize, if I'm being totally honest, when I see it, it doesn't reflect where my mindset of what the Titans would be initially. Like, I want to see like the Marv Wolfman kind of run. I want to see, a little bit more colorful costumes. I want to see them not necessarily say fuck Batman, but still have that rebellious side. And like, I want to see a fun going group, but at the same time, I still want to have them have a little bit of an edge. So does it necessarily match up with my interpretation of the Titans right now? No. Same thing with Superman and Man of Steel. Like, I would pick probably a more hopeful version of that character, but I see what they're trying to do, and knowing what I know that they're going to get them to that place once we let them go through an entire season of building these characters up. So I wanted to get that out of the way first, so that, something could be said based on what I know now. Brad, knowing what you knew before this and knowing what you know now, how do you feel about the Titans?
Okay, so I told you when I first saw the
You did.
trailer,
Yep.
It looked like a combination of Arrow and Riverdale.
Yeah, and total honesty, I see that 100%.
I'm a little disappointed in this trailer. First off, because if this is the design aesthetic they are choosing to go with, I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, it's understandable.
This is the flagship show for the streaming service, correct?
Essentially, I mean, there's going to be a whole bunch more, but yeah, that is going to be like, this is the one that kicks everything off. So yes, flagship.
I was hoping in terms of quality that it would be better.
That's fair.
And it seems like you're just average run of the mill TV show.
I agree with that. That makes sense. Now there's a lot more that they haven't shown, including some stuff that I can't talk about. But there is a lot more planned. I mean, we know that characters like Wonder Girl, Hawk and Dove. Well, we do see Hawk and Dove in the trailer. Also, one thing I want to bring up, the level of brutality. Some of that stuff, it looks very much out of context of what's really going on. There's no necks being broken by, I think it was Robin stepping on that guy's head. I think what was told to me was that the guy was already dead at that point. So he's stepping on him as as they're leaving battle or whatever. He's just pissed off. A lot of that is very much taken out of context because it's supposed to be right at the very beginning. They're trying not to show the show at the end of the season. This is very much them at that dark place in the very beginning where they're all, looking for each other and or looking for their purpose essentially and trying to come to a better place. Because Robin's kind of had it with Batman. He's had it with like the crime fighting life and all that stuff. And he's just out on his own. Raven's trying to deal with her inner demons. Beast Boy's kind of searching for a purpose. So there's all this stuff that's going on in this first few episodes before they even really meet up with each other or before they meet Hawk and Dove. And what I've been told is actually that Hawk and Dove are the catalysts that kind of add a little bit more levity into the show, even though they're going to be pretty heavy brawlers themselves. So there's a lot going on, and I can totally understand why there would be some hesitance about, this is such an extreme. But again, they try and do that on purpose because if you just saw another Titan series, it might actually feel like it's played out because Teen Titans Go I mean, you've probably heard before the movie came out, all these people saying, "Oh, that's Titans, but that's for babies. That's not my show." And a lot of people wouldn't watch that, but I know a lot of people who actually do enjoy it. And I think the idea with DC was there's the Teen Titans Go crowd, there's the Teen Titans from the animated 2000 series, and then this is going to be Titans that's more respectful to the comics, but over a slow burn and a slower period of time. So it's going to cater to an adult crowd, but I do disagree with Warner Brothers. I think they need to go for the younger audience to get everyone involved with this streaming app. But they kind of encourage me that even if this isn't for the younger crowd, there's going to be so much other stuff like Stargirl. There's going to have Young Justice Season 3, which will also be for the kids. So there's so much going on with this app, and Swamp Thing, I guarantee, will not be for kids either. So they're trying to find a balance that, you have your adult programming, you've got your kiddie stuff. Harley Quinn is going to be somewhere in the middle where it's going to be cartoony, but it's also going to be very adult oriented. So it's trying to find that balance. And while I think this isn't exactly how I would have done things, I think they have an idea of what they want and what they're going for. And I think when it's all said and done, by the time we get done with season 1, I think people are going to be more satisfied with this Titan series than they think they are. So that's all I can really say on that, honestly. I'm still genuinely excited, even if I felt like some of the CGI was a little off. The thing that I have to remind myself is, it's still a TV production. So, yeah. Anything that you would specifically change? Just make it lighter, or what do you think?
Gosh.
Or would you have a different series in its place? How would you break this DC streaming universe open? Like, how would you introduce it?
I would still start with Titans.
You would? Okay.
Yeah. Just fix the goth girl. She's extremely over the top goth.
Well, I mean she pretty much is that way in the comics and everything else. I mean, like
there's a difference between comics and animated and on screen.
Okay, I mean, and that's fair. She is the son of essentially Satan in the in the comics and everything. But I can understand that. You would rather her have some level of levity, I guess.
I mean, make her a little bit more relatable and then go the extreme, like whenever she freaks out.
Oh, okay. So you'd rather her be like a normal girl who slowly...
her
okay.
goth is just on 100%, and it's just like annoying.
See, and that's the thing. They've actually kind of shown it in the cartoons and all that, is that she has that demon at first, and then she meets the Titans, and then slowly she becomes one of the group, and like she has a good balance of it by the, like I'm watching, I'm burning through Teen Titans Go because it's actually a really fun show. And she starts off and she talks about how, she's essentially enslaved by her father and his will and all that stuff. And then by the end of it, she's goofing around with them too. I mean, she's got some very like Daria, very dry level humor, but she still finds a way to grow out of that, one-dimensional note of like, I'm in service to my father. Everything is bleak and everything is pain, all that stuff. So yeah, I think that's the directive. I think we, like we talked about on 30 Minutes of Life, there's just this feeling that we have to react to everything immediately. And while I'm sure that's what Warner Brothers wanted and was their intention, the reality is that if we take 2 extra seconds to think about where does the show go from here, we'd probably realize that it's probably not going to be as, crazy bad. Like, Robin isn't going to be dropping F-bombs the entire series. Actually, if you were at Comic-Con, you'd see there's a updated version of the trailer that actually doesn't have the F-bomb in it. And they reminded me, they're like, actually, we put that out there with him saying fuck Batman because we knew that was going to get that reaction. He's not going to have that in the series. He probably won't be. He won't. I'm like 90% sure that they told me that he won't be saying fuck Batman when the show actually comes out. So
basically that's just clickbait.
Essentially, yeah, because they want you to. The idea was to make you go, okay, this is Robin, who's not the boy wonder. He's not tethered to Batman's utility belt, essentially. He's going out on his own. It's a very bold statement for him to make so that you as the audience go, oh, this is different. The problem is it can be so different, and I'm sure we'll discuss this more in the future, but the idea that it's so different for some people that they have to be like clearly enraged about this. Like, this is not my show. Like, it is what it is, and it's not going to be for everybody. I mean, even if the show is fantastic, there's going to be people that end up hating it no matter what. It's just going to be the way that it goes. So, I wish them the best of luck. I think it'll be like, I've already signed up. And by the way, if you guys sign up right now, they're offering 15 months as opposed to a full year. So you get 3 extra months added on if you subscribe to the DC universe ahead of time. But if you just want to do month to month, it's going to be $7.99 and it's going to drop shortly here in the fall. So that's the last thing I wanted to say on the DC universe. Any final thoughts?
Just stop being fake edgy with Titans if that's not the direction you're going
Fair enough. Yeah, be honest about what you're going to give the fans. I like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll cut to a quick commercial break, and we will talk a little bit about what happened at Comic-Con.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
This week's sponsor is Loot Crate. For less than $20 a month, Loot Crate gives the geek in you a special treat with each box. Loot Crate is a subscription box service with more than $40 worth of geek, gamer, pop culture gear, collectibles, apparel, etc. You'll have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive this month's crate. And when the cutoff happens, that's it. It is over. So head to lootcrate.com/nerdrage and use the promo code NERDRAGE to get 10% off your crate today.
And now, on with the show.
And we're back. Okay, so we pretty much covered everything today, honestly, because there wasn't a whole lot from Marvel, a lot of miscellaneous. DC had a whole bunch that we just went through. Just wanted to talk about my interview that happened at Comic-Con and some of the experiences that were there. So first of all, I want to just pitch the question to Brad. Is there anything you wanted to know, being a fan yourself, about what happens at Comic-Con, the interview that I had, or just what the DC universe is going to entail?
I'm actually curious about the interview that you did.
Okay, so I will do that. I will run through the interview. So I began, simply put, because I did this all by hand, so bear with me, guys. I actually wanted to do an audio interview, but I didn't think ahead to like, hey, I should bring my equipment. So I wrote it all as I'm talking with Lisa. She's fantastic. Warner Brothers was so nice and accommodating. They took me up in this little room, and we had this whole sit down. So I asked her a little bit about how she broke into the industry. She gave me some of her back history, and I'm sure our fans aren't super interested in all that, so I'll bypass that essentially. Then I asked her essentially what drew her to WB and television. And she just said that Warner Brothers is like this big family, and she's always felt like she's been a part of it, and you know she likes being in that family style environment. Which, you know, respectfully, that's probably, you know, all-encompassing kind of statement, but at the same time, like I got this genuine vibe when I was up there, because they took me up on this platform up on the, you know, it's a whole Warner Brothers thing where they had the cast and crew of XYZ show down on the ground floor, and then they open up this like velvet rope, and then they let you upstairs, and I was like, oh, this feels like big time stuff. So it was cool. And she's telling me about the family dynamic, and everyone's so nice and accommodating up there on the stage when I was interviewing her. And then I asked her what property excites her the most. And interesting response from her was Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Like the original?
No, the new one. We've talked about this only maybe one or two times, but Sabrina the Teenage Witch is going to, I think it's like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So it's Sabrina more akin to the comics, where it's kind of like Riverdale, but like Sabrina's version of that, and it's going to be on Netflix.
Huh.
So
interesting.
Yeah, think of like the TV show Supernatural, but with a female lead, and then on Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, to give you a little bit of context there. So that one really surprised me because I thought she was going to go in a different direction, and that I had almost forgotten that Sabrina was the thing. So that caught me off guard. Then I asked her, what are some big things with Warner Brothers right now? And then we discussed the fact that the merger's going on and how that's all playing out, and kind of what I had said before when we were talking about Comcast and DC with all that stuff with Disney, sorry, Comcast, Disney, and 21st Century Fox, how there's a lot of moving parts, kind of waiting for the dust to settle, a lot of big projects planned for the future. So some cool stuff there. I asked her really, what are the plans for WB in terms of streaming? Are they going to merge in with everything that DC's doing? Now, they actually have a new media division that she said that they just created just for all this sort of stuff, because she knows that streaming is essentially the future. So could we down the road end up seeing either Warner Brothers make an all-encompassing app that includes the DC stuff, or will it be Warner Brothers with a separate package that also includes the DC streaming stuff that you can add on to it? It sounds like that might be the direction that they're going. So, and on top of all these other streaming things, your CBS's and Disney's, Warner Brothers might have their own. So that should be interesting. Is there any shows that you personally would like to see show up on Warner Brothers streaming?
I'm always down for Dr. Fate.
Oh, no, not even DC stuff. I mean, non-DC things, like stuff that's Warner Brothers Television.
Oh, Warner Brothers Television.
The thing I told her was, if you do Warner Brothers Television, you could make that separate package where it's DC stuff, and then you could also have HBO Go tacked onto there. And I think the thing that she said back to me was that, well, why not just make Warner Brothers and HBO Go a thing? Which that could actually be her kind of leading me into, this is our plan for the future. So take that one with a grain of salt. But the idea that you could go to a streaming app and just watch Game of Thrones or Westworld or Big Bang Theory or any of these shows and, get that sort of content all in one streaming device is actually really cool, because I'll be honest, I've been kind of falling away from Big Bang Theory. So, watch that at the same place I can watch Westworld. I think that's awesome. So we'll see. I mean, that could end up being on there. Maybe it's just a work in progress for now, but I still think that's awesome. I asked her about the fears of growth and competition in the industry with Disney and all that stuff. And she said, you know what, with us, with our just recent merger, we're not afraid of anything at this point. So that actually brings up a concern of mine, is I wonder what the other companies who are not Warner Brothers and are not Disney right now are thinking going forward. Do you think that Comcast is sweating bullets, or that Fox is sweating bullets because, Fox is giving away their properties and they're focusing on, sports and their, that sort of entertainment division? Do you think that they even care at this point once they sell their stuff off? Or, or in the case of Comcast or CBS and all their stuff, do you think that there's reason for concern with any of their product?
I don't think so. I think Comcast made the bid simply because, they wanted to make a bid because they saw value in the TV department, and versus Disney saw, I guess, probably the same thing, but they still had, Fox had all the Marvel properties, and that was, that worked out well for Disney if they could get the Marvel properties and the television properties as well.
Well, and see, that's the thing too, is with everything that's been changing up and shaking up and all that stuff, I wonder what Comcast does next, because maybe they end up doing their own streaming thing, because they have enough stuff under Universal and all that, and technically they are Comcast, so they have a digital access that could pop up on phones. Maybe if you have Comcast service, all of a sudden you get this streaming app and they don't charge you, and they could do that sort of thing. But I just feel like Warner Brothers and Disney right now are such powerhouses that it's going to be hard for them to be beaten by anyone at this point. But yeah. Let's see. I also asked her, going on from what I said before, is Westworld getting another season? She said that yes, season 3 is being looked at right now. They have, she's not worried about oversaturation in the market because they think that there's a lot of great stories that they have to tell going forward. We talked about Titans, the whole Naomi Campbell thing. I actually got that from her, which I had forgotten about the inspiration of Naomi Campbell. So that was great insight. She said that Vixen is getting another season. It's supposed to be coming also to CW Seed. So you might be seeing that very soon. Let's see. And then I also have, talking about Titans, very interesting thing that she said and how she described it to me. She said the way that she would describe Titans for at least the first season before things start to change is that it's a combination of The Exorcist, Fight Club, and John Wick.
What the hell?
The Exorcist, I asked her about that. I was like, well, what do you... Now, I'm curious about that because when you say... You told me all the things that you told me, and then you tell me these 3 things. And then she goes, well, The Exorcist, if you think about it, there's a great deal of supernatural. And wouldn't you say that's a superpower in its own right? And I go, actually, now that you mention it, yeah. And the reason she says The Exorcist, and I get why she's saying that, is because Raven is essentially demonic. And I get that. Gotcha. The Fight Club thing, I think, is more for like Hawk and Dove and Robin because they're a little bit more brawler types. And then John Wick, just because I think there's going to be some gunplay involved, but it's not going to be like Beast Boy with a gun. So she wanted to reassure me that it's not going to be everyone, shooting guns, but it's going to be nonstop action from some of the characters. Let's see. She also told me that, it's the things that I said before. When fans get outraged, it's the emotion that really is what draws people to a show, whether that's for good or bad. And then she said what you see is done on purpose, that their focus on season 1 is going to be about Raven. Then I asked her some fan questions. So I promised some fans that I would ask these things. Like I said, what do you think about outside YouTubers? Someone brought up over on a different page, said like Ismahawk, who does those superhero showdown kind of things where it's like the Joker versus Deadpool, who would have a more comedic battle kind of thing. And they do a good job over there. And she said the way she looks at it is those are very I'm trying to find a word here because I bullet pointed it, some of these things. But she said like she appreciates them for being the fan servicey things that they are. But at the end of the day, the way that she looks at it is that they provide the professional content, whereas those are nice add-ons that help keep the fan service and the fan enjoyment alive. So she appreciates them, but she doesn't have any, or Warner Brothers Television doesn't have any desire to acquire any of those people up and like make them like Ismahawk isn't going to be joining the TV production line anytime soon just because he made a short about Batman, Then we again talked a little bit more about Titans reactions, stances on criticism. Essentially, they're not fazed because it's, what they're looking to get is some criticism. She said that the DC universe is not going to have the level of connectivity that people might be expecting initially. She said a lot of people might make preconceived notions thinking that, Swamp Thing is going to be connected to Titans and all these other shows are slowly going to be intertwined with each other. And she said, no, right off the bat, they are going to be their own shows. But she wanted to remind me, she's like, again, we're going to have Doom Patrol down the road, and it's already going to be a backdoor pilot inside of Titans when we see Titans this season. So there is going to be interconnectivity, and the odds that Swamp Thing could come down the road is definitely there. But the focus is more on getting their first season right and then doing what they've already done on the CW, which is to make these characters come together when you want to have the fans see that crossover event that gets them all excited. So
Yeah.
It's not ruled out, but it's there, you know?
Yeah.
So then the last couple bits here, she said that there is plans for a Constantine animated series second season, because I had a fan ask me, oh my gosh, I love Constantine so much, can we get another season? And she said, put a little checkpoint in, or a check mark in your notes there, because we are definitely working on that at this time. I asked her about the dark tones, and she reassured me that dark tones were not something that they were going to completely adhere to. Not everything was going to be dark in the DC universe.
Okay.
I was going to ask them some stuff about their PR team. I had some additional thoughts. I just never got around to it. And then the last couple questions I asked her were about the Joker and this whole DC Dark label. And she followed up with a response that was essentially, I can't talk too much about that, but I can tell you that not everything is the way it's made out to be. If you think that something's happening and you don't see a lot of proof of it, you don't necessarily have to believe that it's coming, which is why I still stand on the fence about Joker. I haven't seen enough. I keep hearing Joaquin Phoenix. I have our report that we got, and I have seen some additional physical proof, but nothing that's solely concrete in the sense that, I'm not seeing, Robert De Niro signs on for the Joker project, which has a name but kind of doesn't have a name, because they're saying it's just Joker now instead of Joker Origin. So I don't know. It's so hard to say at this point. And I will never be the guy, and I want to make this clear for our fans, I will never be the guy that comes out and just says, I definitively say that this thing is happening without any real unsubstantiated proof. At the very most, we'll have some sort of physical evidence to prove it, but 9 times out of 10, we'll tell you that it's a rumor if it's going to be a rumor.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope makes us stand out from other shows too, because I know a lot of shows say some things that are wildly incorrect, and then they just kind of roll with the punches like, oh, we screwed up. Fuck you guys. We just gave you some false news, whatever. And I hate that. But she wanted to point out the DC Dark, DC Black comic book line. And from there, I was telling her about Jeff Johns and how he's such an inspiration to me. And there's a possibility, as we talked about, that next year I could be sitting down with Jeff Johns and talking about some DC properties. So I just want to quickly say, I don't know who's listening from their content, because I know some of them said that they would listen and they took our business cards and all that. But I legitimately want to say, as no pandering way or anything like that, I told her in the interview, I legitimately love Warner Brothers. I love DC. There's very few things that I've ever been super critical where my nerd rage really got out. And I just really appreciated the time to do that interview, and I hope that we have more chances to do that sort of thing in the future, because Comic-Con was great. That's really all I have to say about it. I love having those conversations, and the fact that next week we're going to talk to someone from the Teen Titans Go movie is just another little tip of the cap that I can't wait to do more of these sorts of conversations. So before we round this all out and close the show, Brad, did you have any other, as someone who hasn't actually been on the floors of San Diego Comic-Con, what fanish questions do you have about the experience there?
How much more different is it than, per se, like a Chicago Comic-Con or something?
Like C2E2? Yeah. I would say the size is definitely there. It's if you're at C2E2, and this kind of is a little bit more regional, because I realize not all of our fans are even from America or have been to C2E2, but I think of C2E2 in terms of a big Comic-Con, but even that is a third the size of what you're getting at this. I mean, you're seeing Warner Brothers, you're seeing Image Comics, you're seeing all people from all different walks of the industry. You're seeing video game companies. My one regret is I have so many images from the show. They even had a little thing set up for Resident Evil because Resident Evil 2 is coming out. So there was a little stage that was set up where you could take a picture next to this bloodied cop car that's jutting out of like the city wall. And then you could take a photo there. And I think they had a zombie up there next to it at some point too. And like they have all sorts of just, I don't even know how to put it, just fan interaction kind of things that you can do and just experience and be a part of that world. There was a demoing area for playing the new Smash Brothers game, which I was so pressed on time that I didn't even have a chance to do that, which I really wanted to. I really want to play that game so bad. And then, a lot of collectibles and exclusives. Like last year, I bought an Alex Ross painting. I just had a lot of fun there. I got that Ahsoka Tano signed autograph from the actress who played her there. And for a good price too. Believe it or not, there are some great things at Comic-Con that you can get at an affordable price. I got a $20 piece of artwork. Our good buddy, Andrew Day, who does these vertical drawings. You can see them on our, Instagram, and you can check it out on his Instagram as well. He's always making new ones, and he's done DC and Marvel for so long. And then he advertised that they were going to do a Rocketeer one, and it was going to be just for the con. So I went there.
Rocketeer?
Oh yeah, no, it looks great. It's just him shooting off into the clouds, and it's that vertical imagery that he does. So I bought it. I was like, I took a selfie with him too, and had the art in my hand as we did it, and he's just a great guy. It's a great opportunity to tell the artists there, because they're so interactive, how much you love the stuff that they do. I've talked to like James Tynion IV and just told him while he was signing my Dark Knight poster, like, hey, you do such great work, and I love this run of Batman, and this is great, and da-da-da. And they're just so positive and responsive to all that. And a lot of the autographs, if you go to DC's or Marvel's booths, they have them for free. They'll have like a rotation of, okay, we've got these two on the docket for the 10:30 slot, and then they're there for like 30 minutes. A small line forms, which I'm very surprised, because I thought that would be like a line out the door kind of thing. But you get a small line, they sign your stuff free of charge, and it's one and done, and it's great. One of my favorite things too was all the people that I met, and I don't want to do all the name dropping and be that kind of guy, but I ended up meeting Kathy Kelly from WWE. She's one of their personalities. Got a selfie with her. I met Hector Navarro, who's a DC guy he's also kind of in the YouTube-ish podcastery realm like we are, but he also does a lot of DC content for their stuff. Then I started to meet some other great people, like Bruce Timm was there, and I actually shook his hand. I didn't have anything from the animated series, the 90s Batman animated series, or anything that I could have him sign, but I just walked up to him. I was like, hey man, seriously, big fan of your work. I didn't have the heart to say anything about Batman and Harley, because I'm sure that's probably still a sore spot for him. Or the Batman and Batgirl scene from The Killing Joke.
Gotcha.
But nevertheless, so much of his stuff, Green Lantern, the animated series, Justice League Unlimited, his whole art style and the cartoons that he had done over the years, I could not be a bigger fan of his. And he was just a great guy. We shook hands. He was doing autographs for like $5. And I felt so bad. I was like, I would pay you $50 for your autograph, if I'm being totally honest, but I had nothing. So we just took a selfie and shook hands, and that was that. But everyone's so much more open and interactive. And, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, like, I was actually hoping to see John Schnepp there this year too, because when we spoke at Vegas, their amazing Comic-Con, that was the intention. So, you can meet so many great people here. For us too, it's a nice little way to network, but it's just a great experience. And even if you don't have the money to get in the convention floor, there's a million things outside. You can go to the DC universe and hang out in Robin's loft, and you can go into the Doom Patrol's lab. It's just a great time, honestly. Any other thoughts? Because I don't want to keep rambling. If you have any other stuff, I'll mention it real quick.
I got nothing else other than that, really.
Then I think it's a good place to call it a night and a show. So for this week, I just want to say, again, thank you guys for all the downloads on the last episode. Thank you for being so patient as we went through all the Comic-Con stuff. I was actually out in LA just days after all of the Comic-Con stuff, so it's been hard for me to get back home, but I'm here. We're glad to do more episodes. We've got a whole bunch more planned. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter. You can find us on pretty much anywhere podcasts are being spread around the internet. We also are now on Spotify, which is a nice little gift for us, which we thank you guys for that. Quick shout out that I want to say to all of our fans, whoever you were, the buying and anything on Amazon during Amazon Prime Week or Prime Day or whatever it was, there was a whole little set of deals and discounts, and we got a nice little kickback because you guys all clicked on our link. I want to say thank you for that. We had some recent purchases on our store. You guys can always buy any of our merchandise there. And if you have any suggestions, please email us at the show. Or if you just want to be on the show sometime, you can hit us up at nerdragepod@gmail.com and ask us any questions you want or tell us whatever you want to know. I mean, that's pretty much it. So Brad, I think for the Nerd Rage podcast, I've been Ryan Anderson.
And I'm Brad Learman.
And we will see you guys another time.